Thank you, Ms. Graftiza. And good evening to Dr. Cascone, to members of the board, and especially to Ms. Tanya Flowers, who is our new business administrator and board secretary. So welcome to the West Orange School District, Ms. Flowers. And would you take us away? We are calling to order the meeting of the West Orange Board of Education on this January 25th, 2021. Roll call, please.
Thank you, President Trix-Hales. Roll call. Mrs. Huerta?
Here.
Mrs. Merklinger?
Here.
Mr. Rothstein?
Here.
Vice President Tunnicliffe?
Here.
President Trix-Hales?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to just call attention for those of you who were not with us at our last meeting. We are now putting our board goals for this current school year on our agenda. And this is to not only inform the public, but to keep us all focused on the work on which we have approved for this coming year. And I want to just call your attention to the last goal. The Board of Education will complete the conversion of the board's policy manual and accompanying bylaws and regulations to Strauss Esme and fully implement the Elon online search engine by January 2021. We do have a policy meeting coming up next week, and at that point in time, we will really pin down the date that we will be ready to go live online with our new policy manual. And so we will not meet our January deadline, but I'm pretty sure our policy committee, Ms. Merklinger and Mr. Rothstein, will have a new date for us, and we will be able to modify that at our next board meeting. So thank you very much. And may I get a motion for consideration of the closed and public meeting minutes from January 7th and 13th, please?
Moved.
I'm sorry? Oh, the Pledge of Allegiance.
The Pledge of Allegiance.
I say thank you very much. So please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now, consideration of the closed and public meeting minutes of January 7th and 13th. Do I have a motion?
Yes, moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? There being none, Ms. Flowers?
Okay. Mrs. Huerta?
Yes.
Mrs. Merklinger?
Yes.
Mr. Rothstein?
Yes.
Vice President Tunnicliffe?
Yes.
President Trix-Hales?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, we'll have our student liaison reports. Our young ladies are with us this evening, so please, you have the floor.
Hello. So to start, for the month of February, we will be having a month-long Black History celebration. So we thought that since we can't be in person and have like a one-night thing, why not just make it a month-long celebration? So the theme is celebrating Black women and girls. And throughout the month, we will be featuring local Black women and girls who will have, who have positively impacted West Orange High School. More information can be found on the Student Council Instagram. It's WOHS _STUCO. And then tomorrow night at 8 p.m., Anya Dillard, I apologize if I said that wrong, was nominated for the Human Rights Award for the Controversialist, a global organization for the Gen Z community, and will be speaking as well. There's more information on our Instagram story at Whoa Student Reps. And then last for me, the West Orange Youth Caucus. If you didn't know, we held a youth-led organization dedicated to social progress, of which Olivia and I are part of, hosted online. I hosted, and we had some speakers, guests like Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, Congressman Donald Payne Jr., some people from the school, Jordan Scott Young, Baharam Meditu, and some alumni like Joseph Naliath and Charles Aborisad.
Hey there, thank you, Andre. A quick preface, my Wi-Fi keeps coming out, so Andre will hop in and fill in for me if that happens. Recently we had a presentation done for West Orange High School staff, which was sort of an in-school discrimination presentation by the Student Equity and Equality Board. The presentation had a lot to do with implicit bias with teachers and kind of examples of in-school discrimination and how it has happened in West Orange. Our fellow students did a great job of informing West Orange High School staff of in-school discrimination and implicit bias and what it can look like, as well as how staff can better conduct equitable classrooms. The council began with surveying the students and gathering information about certain experiences in the high school, and then that data was taken and translated into a presentation, which was delivered by members of the council to the school's staff. We were really proud of the initiative taken by these students and their active strides toward a better and more aware school. Furthermore, very exciting news. We are very excited to announce that our Student Liaisons account on Instagram is up and running. It has been up for a while, but me and Andre have posted introductory posts on the account, and we're really excited about having the Instagram platform sort of serve as a more direct link to the students and the student body voice. We plan to in the future post maybe like meeting summaries and agendas to keep the students informed and about school related processes and politics, as well as links to the meetings as well. And this, I think it's a great opportunity to provide us and the board with a great opportunity to connect and listen to the students. So we are very, very excited to kind of get this on its feet. If you'd like to follow us, Andre, is it WOHS Student Reps?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. That is our account name. If you don't, if you'd like to follow us and kind of check out what we're doing, that would be awesome. That closes up our report for tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Ridley and Ms. Celestin. You always amaze us. We tell you that each time. And the Instagram account, that's cool. I'm going to be following you because you know where to go. Okay. Any comments from any of our board members for our student liaison report? Or we'll hold those until later?
Oh, I just would like to say, I think it's wonderful to see the role reversal of students going in and working with our faculty on the implicit bias and discrimination presentation. So I think that's wonderful. I'm sure your teachers were real proud of you. Do you know how many attended?
Was it? I believe it was mandatory. I'm not.
That was yes, it was actually an agenda item on a high school faculty meeting.
Oh, fantastic.
Yep.
Well, that's great. Well, congratulations. And we look forward to hearing more about what you're going to be doing in the future.
All right. Again, thank you so much. As I said, you continue to impress us. And now Dr. Cascone, Superintendent report.
Thank you, Ms. Trigg-Scales, and to Olivia and Andre, thank you. We expect that you'll be trending on Instagram by the February meeting. I hope that's not too much of a setting the bar too high for you. But yeah, even if I were, I'm sure it's not something you couldn't accomplish. So thank you. I think that's a great step to increase the visibility on the messaging of the student liaisons. And I'd like to take credit for the student equity panel, and I can take a very, very little credit for that, in that I created a forum, a mechanism by which this group of students could come up with ideas and support that and assist them in kind of some of the logistics of getting scheduled into the high school meetings. And I want to thank Mr. Moore and the high school administration for being supportive of that. And I think that's really powerful for students to just speak of personal narratives, right? And really, really impactful for staff members. So I would commend them as well. And I'm sure if I had to guess, probably by tomorrow, I'm going to have an email from one of the student panel members saying, we need to get together for another meeting. They've been very good at staying on top of me and keeping me on track, so I appreciate that as well. Before we get, thank you again, Olivia and Andre. Before we get into the formal items, I just want to speak to two central office administrators for different reasons, opposite reasons, in fact. First is to just to say a few words of send off to our director of buildings and grounds, Mr. Ziggy. I always get his name wrong, but Mr. Ziggy, this is his last week in district. We've been fortunate to have his successor, Mr. Semino, in as well for transition, which has been extremely, extremely helpful in getting Mr. Semino acquainted with the buildings. And Mr. Ziggy has been terrific in really orienting Mr. Semino to the facilities and all of those systems. But Mr. Ziggy has been with the district for, I believe, 12 years. We repeatedly get feedback, whether it's from contractors that are coming into the building or even our new director of buildings and grounds, Mr. Semino, just talking about really the condition of our buildings. We have the most buildings over, I believe, 80 years old. I forget exactly what the benchmark was, but we have the most buildings over that age in the county. We have older facilities, and they do an excellent job of keeping them in good shape. We do have some challenges, but they look great. They've never looked better, in fact, with our buildings and grounds department. So, Mr. Ziggy, we wish you all the best in your well-earned retirement. I know that you will enjoy it, but I also know that we can count on you in the event we need to drop you a call and know where something's buried. you can help us find it. So again, congratulations, Mr. Ziggy, and thank you for your service to the district. Now, on the opposite direction, I know Ms. Trigg Scales acknowledged our new business administrator, Mrs. Tanya Flowers, but I'd like to say a few words of welcome to Mrs. Flowers, who joined us. Was it last week or was it this week? It was last week. Yeah, amazing. Time flies. But Mrs. Flowers is a resident of West Orange. She's a parent, and so is integrally invested in the quality of our school system. Mrs. Flowers enjoyed a successful career in banking management prior to having a kind of a life epiphany and making a career change into education, where she joined the West Orange Public Schools as a 6th grade math teacher. After establishing a successful tenure at Edison Central 6 as a math teacher, she had aspirations to become an business administrator, and moved on to Mount Arlington School District, where she was business administrator for 5 years. So we were so fortunate and thrilled to have her. She's made an immediate impact, and I'm just so pleased to have her as part of our team. So please join me in giving Mrs. Flowers a warm welcome as business administrator.
Thank you.
And now we get to our agenda proper. It is starting off with some great news and a great accolade. At the last board meeting, I did recognize Dr. Carrie Orange Jones, just in name, but she was the recipient of a New Jersey Department of Education Exemplary Educator Award. It is a highly prestigious award, and certainly merited some additional recognition. And I invited a K through 12 social studies supervisor, Mr. Figueredo, who had nominated her and sent in the application, the nomination for her, to speak more about Dr. Orange Jones as an educator. Dr. Orange Jones is an educator with whom I've had the privilege of getting to know a little bit more, done some work with. Not only is she an absolutely exemplary elementary teacher, but has also expanded her professional footprint into professional learning on the higher ed level, within the Twitter sphere and things of that nature, and is distinguishing herself as a thought leader and an innovator within the educational profession around issues of equity, around issues of inclusivity. And so we are extremely fortunate to have an educator of Dr. Orange Jones's caliber in our district. And so it's with great pleasure that I turn over the microphone to Mr. Michael Figueredo to introduce and recognize Dr. Orange Jones.
Thank you, Dr. Cascone. Let me discuss a little bit about the New Jersey Exemplary Educator Recognition Program. It's from the New Jersey Department of Education. The goal of the program is to identify educators who are valued by their school and community and have exhibited strong knowledge and skills, an aspiring presence, and a clear vision for quality teaching and learning. Now, the nominator must complete a detailed online application, and the process is strictly confidential, in which the nominee does not know about the nomination. So why did I nominate Dr. Orange Jones? One, Dr. Orange Jones is an outstanding educator within the classroom who consistently motivates and places the interests of her students first. Outside of the classroom in the Kelly community, Dr. Orange Jones is a conflict resolution coordinator, advisor to the school newspaper, co-chairperson of the INRS committee. She's a member of the Social Studies Instructional Resource Committee. She's also the author of our 5th grade social studies curriculum. Outside of West Orange, Dr. Orange Jones is a presenter for the Educator Collaborative. She is a clinical faculty member for the Montclair State University Network for Educational Renewal. Dr. Orange Jones is an adjunct professor at the City University of New York and William Patterson University. And next month, Dr. Orange Jones is a presenter, a panelist, for the Public Education and Business Coalition's Teaching Literacy in Times of Change and Uncertainty. But I just want to go back to point number 1 about Dr. Orange Jones in the classroom. As social studies supervisor, I have the ability to see great teaching when I go into these classrooms. And teaching is a very noble profession, but it's also very hard. When you go inside Dr. Orange Jones' classroom, you would never know that. It's like watching an artist paint. And I say to myself, when I go into classrooms, would I want my child to be in this class? And without a doubt, my daughter, if she were to attend Dr. Carrie Orange's class, would learn more social studies in 1 year with Dr. Orange than she would with a lifetime with her father, who taught social studies for about 20 years. And so, in the words of the New Jersey Department of Education, this year, there are only 93 educators from across the state of New Jersey that are being bestowed this honor. After a rigorous selection process, Dr. Carrie Orange Jones has been chosen as a 2020 New Jersey Exemplary Educator. Congratulations, Carrie.
Dr. Orange Jones, would you like to say a few words?
Whew, it's still really overwhelming. Thank you so much for this recognition. I've been in West Orange since 2003, and I started teaching in 1997. This really is the pinnacle of so many things. I want to thank Mike Figueredo, who's more like a brother from another. We've worked together on the curriculum, trying to make sure that it reflects the experiences of Black, Indigenous people of color. And not to be remiss, the LGBTQIA community as well. I believe in curricula that is inclusive of everyone, and West Orange is a district that exemplifies that. I want to thank Dr. Joanne Pollara, my former principal, who helped write the application. I want to dedicate this to the memory of Detective Calvin Hart, who inspired me to become an educator after he said he thought that I would be a great teacher. And I said to him, I don't even like kids. And I went and took the test and I passed it. And I believe that if it's that simple, it means that that's what God has led me to be. I have to thank my family, my first teachers, my husband and my bonus daughter, who have inspired me to find my voice. I'm going to put her on blast and thank Mrs. Trigg Scales, because her husband, Mr. Errol Scales, met me at a job fair at Washington School in 2003 and took my resume. And he's the reason why I'm here in West Orange. So I like to dedicate this to him too. My West Orange family, specifically my Kelly family, who have watched me grow, I couldn't be happier. And finally, I hoped that I can continue to do this work with the district. Thanking Dr. Cascone for helping me find my voice as well, and Kimya Jackson for inspiring me as well. I think we have work to do, and I am here to help make that happen. And I know that there's going to be more great things to come in this district. So I thank you all so very much. Ooh.
Thank you so much, Dr. Orange Jones. We appreciate that. Wise words as always. And Mr. Figueredo, thank you, sir, for taking the initiative. You know, there's so much going on, and it you know, it's easy to just let these opportunities to acknowledge our educators pass, because it's easy to take the path of least resistance and simply just manage the work that's obligatory on a day-to-day basis. To take that additional initiative to ensure that a great educator like Dr. Orange Jones gets acknowledgement is commendable. And so thank you, sir. And Dr. Orange Jones, thank you. We appreciate you joining us tonight. Wish you good evening and stay safe.
Dr. Cascone.
Yes, ma'am.
I had a few people raise their hand, and I think they may want to say some things to Dr. Jones, if that's
I would defer to Ms. Trigg Scales as the board president. Ms. Trigg Scales.
Oh, you remuted yourself, Mr. Scales. You double clicked yourself. There you go.
Okay, I'm back. I think that's a nice idea. How many hands do we have, by the way?
I have 3.
Oh, good. We'll take those 3.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Dr. Joanne Palera, if you can follow the prompt on your screen, please.
Okay. I just want to come to compliment and congratulate my colleague, my mentor in some ways. I think it was a symbiotic mentorship relationship. And most importantly, my dear friend, Dr. Kerry Orange, on this very well-deserved recognition. Always kids first, people first, understanding, compassionate woman of color who has taught me much. And I continue to learn from my friend, and I continue to love her and cherish her friendship. And I know that there are going to be wonderful, wonderful things in her future, in education, and also in life. I love you, Dr. Kerry Orange Jones.
I love you too, Dr. Joe Palera.
Thank you. Just a note, if you did raise your hand for a public comment, that's not this time, so you can lower your hand. This is just for some love for Dr. Kerry. Maria Breslin, if you can follow the prompt on your screen, please. Maria, there's a prompt on your screen. If you can just push it for me. Okay, I'm going to go to, just says Mark, if you can follow the prompt on your screen, please.
Good evening, Mark Maniscalco, West Orange Education Association. I just wanted to congratulate Kerry Orange. She's one of our most fantastic staff members, and we've always known from the moment we met how exemplary she was. Now the secret is out. Congratulations, Kerry. Let's hope West Orange does everything we can to keep you here for your entire career. We need you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark. And then one more time, I'm going to ask Maria Breslin if you can follow the prompt on your screen. Okay, if not, we'll try again if you want to raise your hand during public comment. Thank you. I'm sorry, Kimya snuck in at the last minute there. Kimya, can you follow the prompt on your screen, please?
Wait, you guys can't see me, right?
No, we cannot see you.
Okay, I just want to say, Carrie, I am so proud of you. I was trying my best not to raise my hand, but I am just so proud of you. You guys don't understand. I've known her since I was 15 years old, and she has always been as driven as she is now. And I am just so proud. I'm taking videos and sending pictures. I'm just, congratulations. You're amazing.
Thank you, my sister.
Thank you, my love.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Okay, thank you. We're done. Thank you, Ms. Trix-Gales.
Well,
Okay, it will. Congratulations, Dr. Orange Jones. I'm sure we'll have some other things to say later, but we couldn't be prouder of you, and we're going to do everything to keep you here. And the fact that you mentioned that you were recruited by Mr. Scales gave me chills, because that just goes to show what recruiting does, and looking for good people and then making it possible for them to stay and grow and give so much back to the school district. So take it away, Dr. Cascone.
thank you, Ms. Trigg-Scales. And, you know, anytime you have a Dr. Joe Pollara sighting, that's generally a good omen. So we're gonna go with that. And it's always nice to see my colleague Kimmy Jackson. We're going to be talking. It's actually a great segue, referencing Miss Kimmy Jackson, as we begin to talk about our equity work, because Miss Jackson has been integral in that district level work, you know, from her position as an assistant principal at Redwood and Washington schools, you know, and with mine and Mrs. DeMendez's energies at times, you know, occupied with the things we've been managing, Ms. Jackson has stepped up and taken an integral role in facilitating those conversations, and has been tremendous, brings a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge to bear for that. So we appreciate that. So Ms. Gravtisa, if you wouldn't mind teeing up the equity audit implementation presentation.
Yes, so give me one moment, please.
Surely.
I clicked a little too quick. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that, guys.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gravtisa. Much appreciated. So as many of you are probably aware, as reflected in one of our district goals, not board goals, but district goals, is the district's goal to engage in a comprehensive equity audit. So in collaboration with our district equity committee, diversity, equity, and access committee subcommittee, we took to identifying potential partners, and you can advance through to the third slide, Ms. Gravtisa, if you would. We took to researching and evaluating various partners who we felt could be effective in working with us in kind of the facilitation of this equity audit. And we had a number of criteria that, as we started to kind of, we had some initially, and then as we started to kind of become more acquainted with different ones, criteria started to emerge. And part of that is really related to timeline, because I'll talk a little bit about timeline later in the presentation. And an organization that had the capacity to be able to come in the immediate term and really be a robust partner with us on this, a partner that brought capacity, that was really going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for us from the instrumentation standpoint, knowing that we wanted to, by the end of this year, be able to report out to our stakeholders basically an equity report card, if you will, of all of our systems in the district. So that ability to work in the immediate term, looking at really an organization that had a previous body of work and doing similar types of projects that really utilized strong research-based instruments and resources, and that was really doing some high quality work in the space presently. And so we had identified about 4 or 5 possible partners. Some eliminated themselves simply by virtue of the fact that they were not able to engage with us this year. Others we felt would be more effective partners for us once we actually get into the actualization of the plan phase, meaning that these were partners that would be effective in working with us on curriculum rewriting or working with us on training. But in terms of being that partner that could really offer us the analytics, they didn't necessarily emerge. So from our evaluation emerged our selected partner, which is Hanover Research. You can advance, Ms. Graftisa. And so Hanover Research is a company that is based out of Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. They are in a variety of different spaces, including the K-12 space, including higher ed. And they offer a variety of different services, including grant prospecting and writing, for which we already contract with them. They are our grant writing partner and grant prospecting partner, but they also offer consultative services and research services. I have included these resources, and we'll make them available on the district website to our community in order that you can take a deeper dive into this, because I know many of our community members will be interested in understanding this partner and what they can offer. And so these are some really valuable resources that I really encourage you to look at. The first is a webinar, and it's really a facilitated conversation with 2 administrators, Dr. David Reese from Prince George's County Public Schools and Dr. Courtney Gober from Plano Independent School District, both districts in which Hanover has been doing equity audit work. Dr. David, and both are outstanding. Dr. David Reese is an absolute star. So I participated in this webinar myself and was really impressed. And of course, if you know anything about Prince George's County Public Schools, it's a top-notch school district, very innovative, very, very forward-thinking as it relates to matters of equity. In addition is in Alexandria City Public Schools, another outstanding, large, diverse, forward-thinking school district. They're doing work, and I really encourage you to check out this 2025 Strategic Planning Committee data workbook that Hanover worked with them to create. And it is essentially basically a 5-year equity strategic plan. I mean, it is top-notch, and this is the kind of work that as we kind of acquainted ourselves with the partner, we were like, wow, this stuff is aces, and this is a partner that we want to work with. And then finally is out of Dry Creek Joint Elementary School District in California, which is probably the school district that is most similar to West Orange, just in terms of its size, is also, and you can see that there's a resources there. So definitely encourage you to access these resources. They really will give you a good sense of this partner and the work that they're doing, which is truly outstanding. Ms. Graftisa? In addition, and just gives you an idea of their footprint within the United States. They've supported over 700 districts, 20 million student journeys, as they say, and have conducted over 10,000 research studies completed across the P20 continuum. This is just a sampling of the research studies that they've done on behalf of partner districts. But as a member, as a partner district, we have access to their portal in which we can access all of their research studies. Any of our administrators can access those research studies, and we can use them to help drive, teaching and learning conversations, organizational questions, and these are all accessible as well. And finally, just to kind of continue, really just kind of giving you a high-level view of this partner, Ms. Graftisa, if you would. You'll see that just kind of a sampling of some of the research questions which they've kind of put together in collaboration with us in our conversations that will inform the work and inform the data analysis which will take place. And you isn't necessarily going to read them verbatim. Actually, you want to go back, Ms. Craftisa? What steps should the district take to identify root causes of inequity? What do disparities in student academic and behavioral outcomes exist in the district? What is the distribution of teachers within the district based on experience, educational attainment, retention, mobility, certification area, and teacher race and ethnicity? How do you create diversity, equity, inclusion goals in the areas of training, curriculum, and programs? What is the typical course trajectory for the students in math, English language arts? How does the course enrollments vary by demographic characteristics? These are all the various research questions that will be, that will be at the top and driving and informing the work. This will just give a sense to the community of really the initial timeline for the work. And that timeline will begin with a diversity, equity, and inclusion survey. This is a research-based instrument which Hanover has developed. That is in our hands now. We actually met with them today. Our internal team will just be reviewing the survey. We'll be reaching out to some additional stakeholders as well to review the survey, to provide feedback. And our intention is then to turn that feedback over to Hanover. And we expect that this survey will be launched to the community within the next 2-3 weeks at most. And that obviously also would be accompanied by communication from me. And that survey would go to families, it would go to staff, and it would go to students in grades 6 through 12. The current instrument is designed for secondary students. You can go back to real quick. What will happen, as you can see, is after contemporaneously with while this survey is out there, Hanover will then do a data and document request from us. They have a kind of a standard set of documents and data that they solicit from the district, which then they will use to kind of line up with the results of the diversity survey to create what they call an equity scorecard. Okay, that will then lead to a benchmarking report, which in turn will lead to info briefs, which will be shared with the community, staff, community members, students, and that will really lay out for us. It'll create a clear picture of where we're doing well, where we need to improve, and then over the course of the summer, we'll bring together an inclusive group of folks, both internal and external, to really start to thresh out and develop a multi-year action plan to address the inequities as they have been revealed and found within the data, both qualitative and quantitative. So really excited about starting up the work. I think we've partnered up with a company that's done some amazing work, that is doing some amazing work. And that concludes my report on the equity audit. And at this time, I would just open it up to questions to the board.
Yes, okay, we'll do our usual order. If you have a question, Ms. Huerta.
Okay, this is not the board report, right? This is just the questions on the
just equity. On the equity.
Okay. I don't know that I have any questions right now, but I think this is really exciting work that's being done. And I thank Dr. Cascone for bringing this on, and Mrs. Kimia Jackson. I have been a part of the parent advisory committees at Washington, and so I think it's really productive work that's being done. And I like that it's not just from the top down, but it's coming from the bottom up too as well. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Merklinger.
Yeah, no questions. I just want to say that I appreciate the thoughtful planning of this and how one piece leads into the next, and I'm really excited to hear what the outcome is and hear the report once we get to the end there and see where we need to improve and what's working well. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Tunnicliffe.
Thank you, President Trigg-Scales. Yes, I echo both of my colleagues' comments that I'm really excited that we're able to finally find a company that can do this for us, and I think it's going to be wonderful. I did want to, my timeline sort of cut off. So what after I just wanted to find out, because I didn't see it on the screen, I was taking notes. What is the timeline for getting all of these from the survey to the info briefs? How long will that, what do we anticipate that taking?
Now, thank you for that question, Ms. Tunnicliffe. A bit of I would argue, a misrepresentation on the slide, which actually came to me from the vendor, that this whole process would take 12 months. My benchmark for this is that we're in a position to do our stakeholder communication in June, at the end of the school year in June, present the findings, and then work on our goal setting and our strategic planning over the summer, with launches of initiatives and goals in the
by the fall.
Not only to inform board district goals in the fall.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rothstein.
I was going to say it's unacceptable to wait 12 months, but I guess that's answered. So no, I think I'm really looking forward to not only seeing the results of the report, but seeing how we move forward from there. I think there's a lot to learn and a lot of ground to be gained. So thank you for getting this underway.
Thank you. And let's go to Ms. Ridley, our student liaison, one of two.
No questions. I just wanted to echo kind of what a lot of other people said, and really applaud your commitment to equity in the West Orange School District. It's definitely something the student body, and especially, and I definitely, as a minority student, definitely appreciate and really applaud. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Elliston.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
All right.
Thank you very much. It definitely, like she said, it means way more than you probably know.
Well said. More than you know. I have a couple of questions, Dr. Cascone.
Yes, ma'am.
The methods for gathering the data other than the survey, what else is Hanover looking at? Are we doing any in-person interviews? With the survey, does that include students, parents, everybody?
Yeah, so this initial, it's a great question. So this initial phase, and I admittedly, I do not have a clear sense of an item by item sense of the kinds of information that they would be culling in addition to the survey. I know that it includes, but is not limited to, existing surveys, which we may have already administered, like, for example, the survey that our student liaisons mentioned, the student survey from the high school. It would include previous school climate and culture surveys we've administered, PD surveys that we've administered to staff regarding surveys we've administered to the community. It would obviously also include, even budgetary analysis of allocations of funding. It would include, obviously, student achievement data, college admission, graduation. It would include suspension rates by demographics, attendance. But this initial round would be largely qualitative and quantitative data that was derived primarily through survey instrumentation. As we moved into successive phases of the implementation, and really that is where it would kind of fan out, and it would become, there would be more opportunities for small targeted focus groups. But this initial short-term analysis would be really utilizing a more kind of expedient means, considering the 3 or 4 month timeline, to get to an initial snapshot.
Great. I know that we participated in a town hall a short while ago with Dr. David Jones, and we talked about what this district was going to do. And I remember you saying, give us the opportunity to show you. It's not about promises, it's about action. And I'm just so thrilled that we are acting. We've got our young people acting. We've got our staff, our administrators. I'm just thrilled. I'm thrilled. So this is wonderful news. So we just keep on moving, keep it moving, keep it moving, and keep it moving. Right back to you, Dr. Casco.
Thank you, Ms. Trigg-Scales. And I'm going to quote the movie Wall Street. And, you know, you done good, but you got to keep doing good. And I think that that's the story, is that, you know, never resting on our laurels. We have, and I appreciate that. And hopefully our demonstration of action instills an ongoing sense of confidence within our community that we're going to take this charge and continue to run with it, but understanding that we need to keep running with it until we've seized the day and accomplished what we've set out to do. Transition now to you know what, Ms. Trigg-Scales, if I might, can we just dispense with the HIB report first, just to kind of clear that off? It's D under the superintendent's report, but I figure we'll do that, kind of clear up that little free radical, and then close out with school reopening. Okay. So just to, I've shared with you the incident report, and I can verify that I have reviewed the executive summary from the anti-bullying specialist, and I do concur with the findings that it was not confirmed as HIB, and am satisfied with the investigation which took place was thorough and exercised all due diligence, and the finding was accurate, and so I would submit this report for your consideration.
And I believe we are to take a vote on it. Is that correct?
There'll be, I believe there'll be a vote.
The end?
At the end, yes.
Okay. Okay, so moving right along.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Trigg-Scales. So before I turn it over to Ms. Mendez, and thank you, Ms. Mendez, for joining us. She's going to kind of touch upon some salient points. And I'd like to, I will also kind of talk about some reflections and observations in our first day of on-site learning today. But before I do that, I just want to kind of come at it from a slightly different direction. So, and if there's any staff members on the call, some of what I'm about to say is going to look familiar because much of this I communicated to our staff in an email correspondence last night. But when I came to West Orange, I interviewed and a number of times since I've been here, I've talked about what's exciting about the opportunity of leading this community is the fact that, West Orange in its multifaceted diversity is really like a microcosm of our country. And the exciting prospect of being able to help lead a community forward in unity, and to really be an exemplar, a local exemplar for our nation in the way we rise above divisiveness and the divisiveness which we see plaguing, our nation today. Unfortunately, as we embarked upon phase 2 of our reopening today, I think it's fair to say that we right now are somewhat divided as a school district. And in many ways, we find ourselves amidst, figuratively speaking, a battle of trench warfare. Both sides are dug in formidable positions. And with each day, the demilitarized zone between these two positions becomes more stark and barren. But before I kind of continue along this train of thought, I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the town hall that we had last week. A trusted colleague of mine, gave me some advice. And she said to me, she goes, I really think that you need to stop trying to be the expert in everything. And I appreciated that. I said, that's a true friend, that's a true colleague when, even when they're your subordinate, when they're honest to you. And I hate that word, by the way, because she's no way, shape, or form my subordinate, other than in where her position resides in the organizational structure. I consider her an equal in all ways. And I feel like I've kind of gone down that road in a couple of ways. In my effort to be the man with all the answers, I've tried to be an expert in HVAC. I've tried to be an expert in public health. And as such, I've gone outside of the bounds of what my areas of expertise are. True, as the superintendent, it's important for me to have a grasp of these concepts. But at a certain point in time, I have to defer to people who are appointed in these positions to guide me. If I second guess or question that which I'm getting, where does that stop? Last Thursday, so when I look at what's the data that I'm using to inform decision making? Well, I'm looking at a weekly situational awareness report from the County Department of Health, which continues to demarcate all the townships in Essex County in either yellow or green. Now, I can be incredulous about that as a layman to public health, or I can interpret it as it's given to me. When I look at that document and I cross-reference it with the local positivity rates that the Department of Health is providing for me, and they're aligned, and they're somewhat aligned with the county positivity rate, what grounds do I have to be incredulous about that as a person who really is not qualified on positivity rates or other matters of public health? When the Department of Health publicly on the record in a recorded town hall calculates the positivity rate for, in front of 600 community members, and the method of calculation of positivity rate is confirmed by the two physicians on the call and the Department of Health people, all of whom have experience in that area. Who am I to question? And can we honestly assert that these individuals are staking their professional reputation on providing erroneous information in a public meeting? Now, as a quick sidebar, because I did do a little bit more investigation, and I was seeking to gain confirmation from the County Department of Health that they would corroborate the reliability, the validity, the correctness of our local positivity rate formula. Even though this is never something that I would ever think that I as a superintendent would need to be delving into. But it's important for me by my own actions to try and resolve some of the dissension, disagreement within the community on this number. And I did receive something in writing tonight from the Director of Office of Emergency Management that he had spoken with Maya Lordo, who's the County Director of Health, and she did in fact confirm that the manner in which we are calculating the positivity rate is accurate. She did raise some question marks about the data on the state site as it relates to the degree to which they are recording all the negative tests and whether they're recording negative tests that are rapid tests. And in fact, if they were recording all the negative rapid tests, would that perhaps lead to a lower positivity rate? But here I am going down the rabbit hole of public health where I don't belong. And on top of that, in public, and we can question the credibility of the people on that call, although I think that's unfortunate. But the reality of it is you have a district physician, you have the local Department of Health and Office of Emergency Management, and you had approximately 100 years of medical experience on that panel, some, if not much of it, within the area of epidemiology. What grounds do I have as the superintendent of schools, as an educator, to say that what they're telling me is not correct? What grounds do I have as a non-certified medical and public health professional to be making sense of data that's coming from other sites and other sources? Am I qualified to look at that and say that's stronger or more reliable than what's coming to me from these experts? I think what's also interesting is kind of along the lines of this kind of mixed narrative is that, and again, much to many people's disbelief, is the governor puts out loosening guidelines, restrictions for local school districts. So from a conventional wisdom standpoint, how could the governor of the state of New Jersey issue a loosening and restriction on guidelines for school districts when things are getting worse? It doesn't make sense. But it's not my place as a layman to make sense of it. It's my place to ask those questions of the people who are qualified to answer them. But but along those lines, why have we not been able to find some degree of consensus on this topic? And, you know, the answer to this came to me in a text I received. And the text said, you need to do the right thing. Now, this was at about 9 o'clock on a Friday night. And I was barely conscious at that point in time. And it just kind of planted a seed in my mind, because we know that that is a tricky question of doing the right thing. Why, though? It's planted a seed in my mind. I woke the following morning with a little bit of rest. And I do my best thinking when I first wake up, because I have time to think and my mind is fresh. And I had an epiphany. And it was all of a sudden clear to me why we could not find common ground on the topic of reopening. And of course, the individual who had texted me, you know, was representing a constituency of people. And so, yes, I mean, from this person's perspective, yes. But I, the superintendent, the board, have a responsibility to do what's right in the eyes of all. And it occurred to me that there is truth and righteousness on both sides of this argument. The unconditional task or even demand for schools to remain entirely virtual fails to acknowledge the very truth of hardship and difficulty this represents for many of our families and students. And the unconditional demand that schools open fails to acknowledge the very real truth that for certain staff members, there exists the risk of severe complications or even death for themselves or infirmed or senior members of their households. Now, of course, as the superintendent of the board, we can take the stance that this is what your job demands. You know, you're the employees, you have a choice. You can either come to work or resign your position. Is that who we are as a district? Is that who I am as a superintendent and as a person? And the answer to those questions are no. We know that our educators, they're not just simply employees of the school district. They're individuals who give themselves every day, who are our parents and families and guardians and caretakers of those children during the day. They teach our children academics for sure, but they teach them so much more. And through this epiphany, the hurt that many of our educators have felt, it finally, I understood it in this moment of clarity. So I do believe that they are much more than just simply, ticket punchers in our district. They're as close to family as can come without being family. And we need to try and approach them and treat them as much so as possible. And I do believe, and I've advised the board, that a lack of acknowledgement of this in the name of managerial prerogative, I do believe when the dust settles on this pandemic, would irrevocably damage the credibility and trust of the board and me as the superintendent in the eyes of our employees. So what is the middle way? First, I think it's important to realize that what we've heard from our parents over the last several weeks is that, yes, it's about learning, but it is also about the value of the behavior of going into school and the some degree of normalcy that comes with that battles and counteracts the isolation that many of our students are feeling. So up to this point, we've been relatively stringent with regard to approving leaves of absence or workplace accommodations. In conversations with the board, conversations with our director of personnel, we will be loosening that gatekeeper. And this will obviously continue to be an interactive process. And while we don't necessarily have unlimited organizational capacity to approve everything, there are certain requests that really stand out for us and that we will be reconsidering. For example, previously we were not really considering the staff member who on their own account was in good physical health, but was the caretaker for perhaps a husband who was in the midst of chemotherapy treatment. We are expanding our circle through this interactive process to try and be as accommodating as possible. In particular, as we know that many of these individuals are already in the queue for vaccines and that these accommodations will be short-term. And so we're working through that. A couple of additional pieces is that I did speak this weekend with the superintendent of South Orange, Dr. Ron Taylor. They're on a similar path as we are. They opened their schools to their phase 3 implementation last week, which included students in kindergarten through 2nd grade, 6th grade, and 9th grade. They were scheduled to begin their phase 4, which was additional grades, I believe, next week. I understand that Dr. Taylor was meeting with his Department of Health today to understand whether the Department of Health thought it were prudent to hover, if you will, over that phase 3 implementation, to study if the inclusion of students in the schools had any impact on community spread. And so I do want to have a follow-up conversation with him to see how that conversation went with his Department of Health. And we may be broaching a similar conversation with our Department of Health in order that we can be even more measured and understand what the impact may be. A couple other pieces just in closing on these kind of 30,000 foot. We are in the process of creating a COVID-19 dashboard for our district. Starting Friday on a weekly basis, we will report out in a transparent and kind of user-friendly manner, what our weekly cases are so that they're transparent for our staff and transparent for our community. And we heard the call loud and clear. We have been hearing about mental health. We've been hearing about it. It's not as if we haven't been acknowledging it, but it really hit home during the town hall last week. And we recognize that not only understanding that staff members who may legitimately be experiencing significant mental health issues as it relates to reopening, those conditions should be treated no differently than diabetes or cancer treatment. And so we are considering those as well in the interactive process for accommodations. We certainly, for staff members who are clinically encountering difficulties about coming in, that's not good for them, and it's not good for anyone. In addition, today I had our Director of School Counseling, Miss Butler, share resources with our staff members pertaining to basically managing the stress and the emotions of coming back to school. Miss Butler has availed herself to basically be a warm line, if you will, internally for staff members. And in addition to that, I have our Director of Personnel working with our benefits broker to put together basically a one-page, easy-to-use resource list with phone numbers and providers and mental health resources that our staff can access quickly. Of course, our staff members know they have access to that, but when you're in a state of despair, sometimes just having it in front of you, sometimes just getting that number in front of you can make the difference, because sometimes just you're in a place where you don't even have the energy to even look for the information to make the call. So providing it at people's fingertips will therefore facilitate people's ability to access those resources so that we can help them manage any kind of feelings they might have. And in closing, my email to the staff, I just I threw out some words: accommodate, evaluate, pivot, and pause if need be. And with that, I would segue into some of my, and I apologize for going on, a lot to say, just some of my observations on day one of our school reopening. I was down at Hazel School today for several hours. And I can tell you that it went very smoothly. We had relatively few students in the building. I would say there were about 80 students total in the building. We had approximately anywhere between 2 and 5 students in the classrooms. I had an opportunity to interact with all the staff members. They were terrific. They were very positive. And many of them expressed a happiness about being back, a happiness about being able to see their children, and being completely transparent. Some of them said they weren't remotely concerned. Well, I should say remotely, but they weren't concerned about coronavirus. But as excellent teachers are, they just were apprehensive and wanted to understand how they could continue to deliver quality instruction in the hybrid. I have every confidence they will, but they are in many ways perfectionists about their craft and are understandably apprehensive. But our grades 3 through 5 teachers were in without students, getting acclimated and getting prepared. Everything was positive. Obviously, the parents and the students were thrilled to be there. I enjoyed watching the students skipping on the way back from the fire drill. Hadn't seen a child skip on school grounds in some time, and it was actually really gratifying to see. I had deployed a central office administrator to all the schools that opened today, and the reports I got back from all the elementary schools were very positive. We had one minor snag, and I want to be completely transparent about it. Because in that way I can allay any kind of fears. We had a little bit of a snag at Mount Pleasant School related to our HVAC, and basically, as I explained in the previous meeting, maybe at the town hall, we are engaging in long-term repair work at Mount Pleasant, even as we've prepared our that building temporarily. For example, we are manually propping dampers open to those hot water units, but we also have automated logic and our plumbing contractors coming in and doing and installing automated brains or controls on those things. When the technicians left on Friday, their foreman neglected to tell them to readjust the systems so that they could be turned on manually. So when a head custodian went into those K2 rooms and went to turn on those blowers manually, he could not do that. We became aware of the situation immediately. Fortunately, with foresight, I had actually deployed Mike Semino, our new director of buildings and grounds, to that school. So he was there. And we relocated the students until such time that we could have the automated logic contractors switch the blowers back on. And according to Ms. Flowers, who was also present on site, that process took less than an hour. So our students and staff were never at any point in time in any room that was unventilated or unsafe. And it was a really kind of an aberrant situation due to the work going on. I spoke with Mr. Semino today, and he's synced up with our contractors, ensuring that that does not happen again. We had, all in all, we had good attendance. I have not had an opportunity to collect those figures from our schools, but the experiences that I saw, and I want to commend our staff, and I just want to say publicly, you know, our staff, our teachers, they truly, all our people who have been in, they truly, you know, deserve nothing less than complete gratitude and support from the community. Really, you know, that in coming in. And so I would just say, let's show our staff a lot of love, all love every day, you know, nothing but love, because that's what they deserve. And so, you know, that's appreciated. Final piece, and then I'm going to actually turn it over to Mr. Mendez to kind of hit some other aspects, is when I went home on Friday, and one of the other themes that came out of the town hall, which I thought was valid, was this idea of we're in this together, and how we conduct ourselves outside of school will to some extent dictate how long we can stay in school. And so I kind of talked with Mr. Bashkoff, and I said, you know, can we come up with some sort of like a PSA campaign similar to like the Leaders Wear a Mask campaign? And so he did come up with something. It just kind of went online today, and I just want to make sure that I'm getting the verbiage correct. Smart Action Alliance. Now, and basically it reads, Smart Action Alliance, smart actions in our everyday lives enable students and staff to flourish inside our buildings. We're going to start starting to contribute to that. Key stakeholders in the community recording short PSA announcements that are tagged to that. And really so we can create a message that is public facing, that is, for lack of a better word, kind of in your face, that kind of penetrates in there. So like, you know, before you let your child go to a sleepover, you know, or go to a 25-person birthday party inside, recognize that I can't tell you not to do it. At the end of the day, I can't tell you not to do it, but think about it. Think about it, because the spread happens in the community more times than it happens in the school. And even if it doesn't spread in the school, as soon as we become aware of the fact that we have a positive case of a student that was in school, it quarantines a class, it could potentially quarantine a school. So we need to be collectively committed to this as a community. And so we're going to be adding to that. I know I got an email today and someone thought it was somewhat vague and inadequate. And I would, on some level, would agree with her that in its current state, it may not necessarily be inadequate, but this is just coming out, and we plan to kind of add to that and really have it catch fire, so to speak, in the township, kind of like our Leaders Wear Masks initiative. So those are kind of my top of mind updates. And at this time, I would just turn it over to Mrs. DeMendez. She has a few things she wants to add. Ms. DeMendez?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Cascone. Good evening to our board, to our community. I think I'm probably going to reiterate some of the things that Dr. Cascone shared in my report. Today, our teachers, our nurses, our support staff, our office staff, and our school leaders welcome back our elementary students in grades K2. This is the second cohort of students that have re-entered our schools as a part of our staggered approach to a reopening plan for hybrid instruction. Present on site were 343 of our youngest learners in K through second grade as a part of cohort A. And additionally, we did have 73 students who were present as a part of our autism, LLD, our BD, our K-12 ID, and our 18 to 21 programs. They did begin last week, but were also present on site. So just over 400 students were present. It's just under what we anticipated for the parents who had registered and said that they would be sending their kids, but today's day one, so we anticipate that our students will begin to return as they've signed up for on-site instruction throughout the week. Our hours for K-5 elementary have been adjusted. We now start our day at 8:45 a.m. and our AM session ends at 12:10 p.m. We then begin our PM session at 1:10 through 3:20. So we are observing that effective today for all K-5 students, whether we're in person or still at home, awaiting our week where we begin our stagger, right? We are in two different cohorts for elementary. Cohort A is receiving instruction on Mondays and Tuesdays, and cohort B on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And we are virtual, synchronous, or in person on Monday through Thursday. And then Friday, we do have our asynchronous day where our teachers in the morning have their morning meeting, their morning hour, where they set up our students for success that day. Today, when our students were in school, our teachers focused on safety protocols, procedures. Our schools also practiced our safety drills. And so for that reason, we did have asynchronous instruction for day one when students were at home. I know this is difficult at home. Parents, bear with us. For today and Wednesday, we have our asynchronous instruction so that we can reacclimate our students to our schools, welcome them back, really go over masking and social distancing and what are those new hallway protocols, and practice our fire drills and our safety drills. So thank you for your patience as we work through it. But we will be in synchronous instruction for the other days and for the remainder of hybrid. Our students are returning for the first time, and this meant kindergarten was day one for this year. And so we saw some of the tears, we saw the hugs and the pictures, and it was just a wonderful thing to see our kindergarten students being welcomed by their teachers with their signs and the warmth and the excitement. It was wonderful for them to be back. Of course, kindergarten is also coupled with the tears and the jitters. So we had some upset stomachs, but all was good. And the kids came back, and I spoke to one little one, Andrew, second grade. And I said, "Are you glad to be back?" He said, "Of course I am." And I said, "And why is that?" And he said, "Because I do not enjoy sitting in front of my computer for 4 hours." And I said, "Oh my." I said, "Well, you're back." So it was good. Our cabinet members were out and about in the schools, as Dr. Cascone shared, and some of our supervisors to offer some support. And so what we observed were that students were masked, students maintained their social distancing, our teachers were outside, they were bringing in our students off of our buses and getting them inside, getting their temperatures checked. Our buses, The flow was excellent today for our general education students. The majority of our buses arrived on time. We did have 1 or 2 late buses, 10 minutes, but we will work on that and get that better this week as we cycle through our cohorts. There were several factors that impacted some transportation for our specialized populations, but we've worked that out. So tomorrow we'll be back on track and parents can expect the pickup and the arrival to the school to be on time tomorrow. We're also learning how to use our thermostat, our thermometers when we come in to take temperatures. I think once it's cold outside, it was like 20 degrees this morning. And so we had to do some rubbing of foreheads and taking temperatures on the wrist. But our school leaders did a fantastic job. Our teachers did a fantastic job at just, maintaining the social distance with the students, using the thermometers to take the students' temperatures before they came into the buildings. So that worked. Just a shout out to our school nurses who were just really fantastic today. Yeah, absolutely. Some upset tummies, right? Maybe the breakfast and the bus didn't all coincide today, but the school nurses were there, and we have our protocols in place, and the students were brought into a space that was set apart for the students, the plexiglass and the nurse and the attention and the care. I have to say that our school leaders, our nurses, our teachers are just very caring and very loving, and they're loving on our students, even though even when they don't feel well, they're there, they're present, right? And the students, I think they're working very diligently to make sure that no student feels awkward or shunned or anything like that, right? So it was beautiful to see. Next week, we'll welcome back our grades 3 through 5 students on February 1st, Monday. And then the week after that will be grades 6 through 12, February 8th, as long as we are on this schedule. And just a reminder to our parents that earlier this month, we shared with you the hybrid instruction guidebook. It's posted on our website. It's in Spanish, it's in English. Please, 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 if you haven't done so already, review the guidebook, because in there are all of our health and safety protocols. In there are the key components of the instructional program, when we're meeting, what time we're meeting, what changes have been made. So we encourage you, again, if you haven't done so already, please read through the guidebook, go through the symptoms that maybe your child or you may experience at home, that we would ask you to just keep your child home that day and continue learning virtually so that we can maintain safety in our buildings. Also, a reminder, if there is an absolute need to travel, please let us know that you've traveled, okay? Again, it's for everyone, that what Dr. Cascone talked about, everybody coming together and making sure we're communicating so that we can keep our schools safe. There is a 10-day requirement for quarantining if you leave the tri-state area. So if you have to travel and you do so, please communicate with the schools, and your child can continue to participate in virtual instruction, and then just come on back after those 10 days have passed. All right. Again, I just want to thank all of our teachers, our staff, our nurses, our paraprofessionals who were there with our students, all of our school leaders, our administrators who came back today, all of our staff was back in our buildings or in their offices or are helping support our schools. We thank you for your courage, for your support, your commitment, not only to the academic well-being of our students, but to the social and emotional well-being as we enter these next phases of hybrid. And for our elementary parents, Wednesday, we have our elementary town hall at 6:30 p.m. We will have a webinar like this. We have our supervisors who will be presenting what we're doing in terms of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And there'll be an opportunity for questions and answers so that we can support our parents as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. De Mendez. And yeah, the transportation piece bears mentioning because I mean, amazingly, I didn't get a single call at the central office regarding transportation, and that's unprecedented. So kudos to our transportation department and to Elena McFarland. our director and her staff down there. This has been a challenge as it relates to transportation cohorts, and particularly with kind of students flexing in and flexing out. It's been a real challenge, but they've done a great job. So kudos to them. Board members, any questions for Mrs. Dominguez?
Question. And this is probably maybe jumping a little too far ahead, and I know baby steps, but I'm sure folks in our community that had the going back to school today experience are probably starting to question or going to ask. So I thought I would just ask it. As we see students returning to school, is there a thought to increasing the number of days the cohorts are on site, or have that option to go on site?
Yeah, I do think that that's a little further down the line, but certainly it's in our planning and in our thinking. Right now, in this phase, we're looking to receive our students by their grade spans. We're doing that to make sure that all of our safety protocols that are in place really bear fruit, right? And that we can return our students back and keep our students and staff safe. When we think about how many students are actually receiving in-person instruction, as long as we can maintain social distancing, then we can continue with bringing our students back in a safe way. I think the response to can we increase cohorts is tricky, but we can evaluate it, right? We can just keep seeing as we go. And the reason I say that is because we want to make sure that we can receive all of our students back safely, right? So the moment we begin to add days, if a parent group, certain numbers start to go up in our parent body that say, I now want to switch over, then we would have to kind of rewind on our days. So we're going to have to balance that out. But I think we're open to just making sure we're analyzing that as we go and see what is most effective.
Makes absolute sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question also, if I could jump in. So with regards to the students who take the bus, can you just remind us how they were instructed about distancing on the bus and how that gets reinforced? And then I also had another question about lunches, but the bus one first, please.
Sure. I think the buses is every other seat. And when students enter the bus, they're supposed to stay in their seats and they're not supposed to, move. There's no eating on our buses. We have really strict protocols with that. The windows are open on the buses. And I think that's, unless Dr. Cascone, there's some additional, I think those are the basics.
And universal masking.
And absolutely, masking is a requirement on our bus and at the bus stops. All right, it's not just on the bus. So we're asking for all students to be masked at the bus stops. Today, what we saw was a few students on the bus, right? There's less students taking transportation than there are students who are coming for in-person instruction, all right? So if we say we're at approximately 50% of students who are coming for in-person instruction, there's maybe half of that are actually riding buses. There was one little girl today, she was the only one on the bus, but we celebrated her coming off that bus, and she said she had the bus all to herself. So, masking at the bus stop, masking on the bus, students 1 seat apart, and they stay still. And then when they come into the buildings, as they are lining up, they're 6 feet apart, and then the temperature is taken as they enter the building.
Got it. Thank you. And then regarding lunches, I know I believe for students who take lunch home from school, they're able to take that on their way out the door.
Yes, we have grab and go. And so then right now we're not eating on school property, right? But we do have the grab and go, and the students take that lunch with them home.
And are we still providing lunch for students who are at home virtual?
Yes.
And do they receive their lunches in a separate area, or is it all in the same?
Dr. Cascone, would you like to answer that?
Sure. Right. So on the elementary level, we're actually the enrollment is small enough where the food services vendors are actually able to deliver the lunches to the classrooms. And so the students get them in their classroom before they leave. The grab and go will be accomplished at the middle school and high school. The food pickups at the schools is a separate location, which is where they've been distributing food since the beginning of the year. You know, at Hazel, for example, it's the side door of the gym is where people whose children are not in school can come to pick up their lunches on that day.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Actually had a question that kind of follows up with Mr. Rothstein's. Do they get breakfast as well for the next day? Or
Yes.
is it just, okay.
Yes.
And I think that's all. What you mentioned, Dr. Cascone, before COVID-19 dashboard, that's weekly. Can you give a little more detail on that? Because I think that kind of thing definitely helps put teachers at ease.
Sure.
And families as well.
Sure. So at a bare minimum, it would have the case counts, by student and staff for each school and facility. We're finalizing, if there's going to be any information above and beyond that. Some are more detailed where it's indicated the total number of individuals quarantined as a result of the case. So we're still kind of fleshing out, exactly what it'll look like. And it could evolve over time, but at the absolute bare minimum, it would include the total number of student and staff cases at each facility for that week.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
I had a very quick question about evaluating teacher requests for kind of opting out of or like choosing to stay home. I was wondering if you could elaborate on the process that goes into like evaluating those requests. What specifically is looked at and how the decision is made.
Sure. So the CDC defines, kind of has a list, for lack of a better word, of pre-existing medical conditions that put a person at higher risk for developing complications or worse if contracting COVID-19. And that becomes kind of the standard list that staff members use to look at and say, I may be at risk. The process as it has been is that the staff member would obtain medical documentation from their physician. And then there would be an interactive process between their district physician and our district physician, to come to agreement that, and ultimately our district physician would need to concur with the private physician's position on that it in fact necessitated an accommodation or, a workplace accommodation. The accommodations previously did not account for staff members who might be in good health themselves, but who resided, and or were a caretaker for somebody who did have one of those conditions. And so we've expanded the circle, if you will, to include that. The process will still be the same. The only difference would be that the staff member would have to submit medical documentation verifying that their husband or wife or whomever, child, was in fact, at medical risk. And it would be an interactive process really between our director of personnel and the staff member. We might also include the district physician if it were something where, it was not something that we could reference the CDC or something of that nature. We've also included pregnancies as well, as we know that women who are pregnant are unable or it is strongly advised or maybe not allowed for them to acquire the vaccine. And I should note that that this was in addition to sort of being precipitated by as a matter of the heart, if you will. I think the idea that, we had staff members who were like, listen, I got my first dose of my vaccine. I'm due to have my second one 3 weeks from now. And we said, you know what? If that's going to make this staff member feel comfortable and confident coming back, we'll cover for them for 2 or 3 weeks. We'll get a highly qualified substitute teacher in the room. And yes, I mean, is there sort of a grounds for criticism, if you will, for perhaps a parent for that child who's coming in. And yes, but what we're asking for in this particular case is unity. We're asking for solidarity as a community in the short term, to put the minds, for those staff members for whom it's relevant, to put their minds at ease. So, it will be, we're also obviously considering significant mental health matters in this as well. And so, we're opening that interactive process up, and leaves that folks who had previously been approved for leaves and whose positions we've still been unable to find teachers to staff anyway, long-term leaves to staff anyway. In the short term, it enables them to get the vaccine. And, so if you're a secondary student, you might have one of your teachers of your course load that might be in that situation. Share a personal detail. My daughter, for example, her physics teacher is teaching virtually, and, she has a sub in the room when she goes in. And I think that's the only one of her classes that's the case. As far as our elementary educators, if you're a K-3 teacher, you know that there's a second teacher that's tending to that class. But we're asking for solidarity and unity from the community in the end, moving forward and enabling to address the idea of getting our kids in and moving that ball forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one or two questions. I just wanted to clarify. So the accommodations we're giving our teachers are distinct from anything that would be covered under the ADA, correct? Or does that dovetail at any point?
Well, I think it's really case by case, depending upon the circumstances associated with that staff member. It could, but if the condition wasn't theirs personally, then obviously it wouldn't apply. But if it was, it could. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I have is, perhaps best answered by Ms. Mendez, about whether the students who are in class, are they actually on their Chromebooks, or are they put those away and they're strictly teaching, but they're able to see, or how is that working? Could you give us a little color on that?
Sure. So students who are in person are predominantly working with their teachers and have opportunities to interact with their peers for learning in person. In instances where the Chromebook is used, it's not for Zoom or for video conferencing. What it is used for is to access a Google Doc that they're sharing, or some type of work that they might be accessing, and they're using the Chromebook as a tool. But certainly we do not have a practice where students are coming in person to then get on their Chromebook and engage in another Zoom call.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, I would just like to applaud and laud and commend our superhero teachers and staff and our building leaders, our cabinet, our superintendent. We've been leading up to this for quite a while, and I think holding our breaths, and today it happened. And to think that there were no bus situations, that never happens, that we don't have a bus situation. So
we did with special ed buses, but we worked it out. So tomorrow we'll be back on track.
Minimal issues with the buses. So I just think that's just most incredible. And today is a good day, and we're taking a day at a time. Tomorrow will be even better. Just wondering, since we're sitting at 343 in cohort A, I had asked Dr. Cascone about attendance, and I know that'll be rolling out because I'll be really curious to see how it grows as parents get the word that it's going well. And even though they signed up for hybrid, they haven't taken advantage of it. So I'm just going to be curious to see how the enrollment changes over time. All right, and so we are.
Scales?
Yes.
May I just have one other moment I had a statement that I wanted to make.
Absolutely, Dr. C.
I appreciate it. I have a lot
You
to
can
say.
have more than one.
I have a lot to say, and I'm sorry. So I wanted to kind of segue with this, when I was talking about the equity audit, but probably is more impactful just kind of, saying it to close my report. And I made a written statement, and I just wanted to read it for our community. So as we come to the close of the month of January, shortly February will be upon us, and we will be celebrating Black History Month. For the first time since the events of last spring, precipitated principally by the killing of George Floyd at the hands of rogue police officers in Minneapolis. I believe that this event represents and will continue to represent moving forward a watershed moment in American history. Tragically, it was certainly not the first occurrence of its kind, but something about this particular time impacted and activated the national conscience in a way never seen before. In the wake of the incident, we witnessed many amazing shows of unity and support, as well as unfortunate adulterations of the Black Lives Matter movement in the forms of violence and destruction. However, intense feelings which are generated during times of crisis, extreme emotion, and which are centuries in the making, can manifest themselves in both positive and negative ways, constructive or destructive. Regardless of where this path leads us, let us always vow to engage in the process peacefully and civilly, as the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. espoused and whose life we celebrated last week. Over the course of the last 6 months, our district has demonstrated a renewed commitment to our work around diversity, equity, inclusion, and cultural sensitivity. The adoption of a relevant board bylaw, district-wide trainings in implicit bias and microaggressions, as well as training for social studies and elementary teachers on culturally inclusive teaching practices, book clubs, affinity groups, and the district equity audit previously discussed are just a small sampling of the actions in which the district and its staff have engaged, demonstrating our commitment to this important cause. For those who are willing, and or those of our fellow Americans in the Black and brown communities, the lens through which we view our schools, our students, and all that occurs within them is irrevocably changed, and for the better. As such, as we embark on Black History Month, we can't help but look at this once-a-year observation in a different way. And I can't help but think that, and at the risk of seeming culturally presumptuous, that it must be terribly patronizing to our Black and brown communities that for years we have celebrated this month contemporaneously with the understanding that there are gross inequities that exist within our society affecting our Black and brown brothers and sisters. And so we embark on this Black History Month. It will be an opportunity for us to engage in reflective and critical conversations about these issues, even as much as it is an opportunity for us to celebrate and acknowledge the contributions of Black Americans in this great country. In addition to some of our more traditional observations, we will see that in some of our schools, there will be pilot ventures of Week of Action in Schools, the first week of February, which is recognized as Black Lives Matter Week. In particular, some of this work is being done through the Parent Diversity and Equity Council at St. Cloud School. This is a week in which each day focuses on a different theme: empathy, loving engagement, diversity, restorative justice, and then an opportunity to reflect. Worthwhile values and lessons for all of our children. Our hope is to learn from these pilot ventures and perhaps begin to replicate them in our other schools. But what does Black Lives Matter mean to me as the superintendent? Well, it means that I, as the superintendent, will have a fearless commitment to understanding the extent to which structural inequities, barriers, and disproportionalities exist within our school system along racial lines. I will be committed and strategic in working with the board, the administrative team, and staff to set goals and adopt programs which position all of our students to be successful. I will work tirelessly to create a learning environment where from the youngest age, all students feel special and empowered to be their best selves, and that the sky's the limit for everyone. However, even as we talk about structural inequalities and discrimination along racial lines, we must also recognize that alienation and disenfranchisement can in fact impact people of all races, creeds, sexual orientations, genders, disabilities, and ages. And as such, We must be fully committed as a school district to creating an environment where everyone is welcome, everyone is enriched, and everyone has the opportunities and motivation to be their best selves. As a school system, of course, we cannot do it all. The structural inequalities which exist in our country go far beyond the educational system. However, we hold ample sway and can certainly do our part. It is my aspiration and goal in due time that we no longer need a Black History Month, a Hispanic Heritage Month, a Women's History Month, but rather the acknowledgement of all peoples is consistently reflected equitably and honestly on a day-to-day basis in the curriculum which we use with our children each and every day. Let us also remember that not unlike self-improvement, like our country, we both have strengths and deficits. We must have the courage to look inward and acknowledge where we must improve. And at the same time, recognizing the ties that bind us together as Americans and human beings will be critical to our success. As a white man and the superintendent of schools, I would like to express my admiration for the grace, patience, and peace which our Black and brown brothers and sisters, with which our Black and brown brothers and sisters have shouldered the yoke of inequity for so many years. And even today, with a renewed sense of urgency and demand, do so with civility and grace. And please know that this miraculous and persistent faith, coupled with renewed commitment and advocacy, that at long last, the country you call home will do right by you and your kin, will not go unreciprocated, will not be disrespected with empty words, indifference, or inaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cascone. You asked for a minute. We would have given you the rest of the evening. That was very profound, heartfelt. You're a very, very compassionate person. I felt it, and certainly appreciate it on behalf of Black and brown people. Very well said. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and now we are ready for our questions from the public on agenda items. And Ms. Graf-Tisa, thank you for reminding our public of the protocols.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Yes, this is questions from the agenda items only. There will be time later in the agenda for non-agenda items, and you're going to use the raise your hand button located at the bottom of your screen. And it's *9 for any of our call-in attendees. You do not have to hit it more than once, and you do not have to wait for anyone else to stop talking to push either of the buttons, and we encourage you to push them sooner rather than later. Maria Breslin, if you can please follow the prompt on your screen and give us your name and address for the record, please. Maria, there's a prompt on your screen that's asking you to unmute. I know we had a little trouble with Maria before. I'm going to come back to Maria. And Susan Amati, if you can please follow the prompt on your screen.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, okay, so Susan Amati, I'm at 11 Fairway Ave.
Thank you.
So I'm really excited to learn about the COVID-19 dashboard. I wanted to know today if you've received any confirmation of any positive cases at the schools. The reason I'm asking is because I have, and I wanted to know what the current protocol is for disseminating this information since the dashboard is not up and running.
Ms. Trigg-Scales, excuse me one moment, Ms. Graf-Tisa. Yeah. Any thoughts on an answer as we go, or would you prefer to wait until the end? Yeah, could we answer as we go? Because I think it's and particularly when we get to the end, I just want to make sure we honor all the questions. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that question. To the best of my knowledge, we have no positive cases in the schools. Last I checked. The current protocol, absent of the dashboard, would be that we would err on the side of conservative and send out a notification to the entire school community that there was a confirmed case at a particular school. On a more personal level, a contact tracing interview would be conducted with either, the staff member or the family of the child to understand, any close contacts that might have been had on school grounds. Those folks would be notified as well. That's, we haven't had too much grounds to do that. We did it a bit in the fall because we had athletics taking place and we had some students in the schools, but while we've been entirely virtual, we've kind of ceased that practice, but that will continue as well as the dashboard.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I just for clarification on the question answer, I'm just letting the person speak their whole time and then you'll answer, or are we stopping in between each question?
Full time and then questions.
Cool, thank you. Susan, I'm sorry, were you finished? I didn't want to stop your time.
I am, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, next, Sandra Mordecai, if you can follow the prompt on your screen, please.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Sandra Mordecai, 516 Pleasant Valley Way. First of all, congratulations to Dr. Carrie Orange Jones on your Exemplary Educator Recognition Award, so very well deserved. And I didn't get a chance to mention it last week, but congratulations to Ms. Trigg Scales and Ms. Tunnicliffe on your elections to President and Vice President, and to Ms. Werter on being elected to the board. Regarding the equity audit update, to quote Hanover's brochure, an equity audit is intended to facilitate ease of use and to promote insight into, discussion of, and substantive response to systemic patterns of inequity in schools and school districts. I'm very happy to see that you are doing this audit. The last audit was done in 2011, and that 25-page report was completed after a very lengthy process and cost the stakeholders over $20,000. I am not sure if all their recommendations were ever fully implemented, and I hope that that equity audit would be looked at in the preparation of this audit. And that was, it's been 3 superintendents and 3 interim superintendents, including Dr. C and Mrs. De Mendez, and who knows what's going on. I hope that the diversity committee has continued to meet virtually and that you will incorporate all that work done by the diversity committee members as well. And lastly, on the actual agenda that was on the report, this is a budgetary item. Why would the board hire an assistant director of buildings and grounds? I note that the director replacing Bob Siggy, who retired, was hired on the November 19th agenda. I'm just curious as to why that's happening. And also in the last financial section of the agenda, you're selling 4 buses, and I'm curious as to why. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Mordecai. I think that's an excellent suggestion. It's interesting. I was not even aware that report had been done as it had taken place. Ms. Mordecai, if you wouldn't mind, maybe dropping me an email and providing me with some details that might help me reconstruct, where that is and how I can locate it. As far as the assistant director of B&G, that really is kind of a nomenclature, kind of change. I mean, the job description has not changed substantively. I think the rationale behind that is that we're looking to create a position that that functions similar, like you would have a superintendent and assistant superintendent, which is that as opposed to operations foreman, you're really creating a position whereby if our director of buildings and grounds was not present for whatever reason, you have that position really serves as a number 2 in command. We also are exploring the possibility of doing some flex with that second position in order that that position, that staff, that manager is present for is on like a swing shift whereby they're present in district in the evening hours and can ensure a degree of quality control in the evening hours. So those are just kind of two pieces I had on that. I would defer to Mrs. Flowers on the, but understanding that this is her first agenda, And if Mrs. Flowers, if you didn't, I know that Ms. Flores really presided over the construction, but if you didn't have an answer, we could always get back to Mrs. Mordecai. Mrs. Flowers?
Thank you, Dr. Cascone. Yes, it's my understanding that these buses were already slotted for being sold off because it was supposed to be done while Mr. Calavano was still here. They are out of date, and we were looking to be able to sell them to another vendor that may be able to use them, but they are older buses that we're looking to get rid of.
They're at the end of their life expectancy.
Yes.
Got it.
But Dr. Cascone, I know that the diversity committee has been meeting virtually, correct? To some extent.
We have, and I'm always going to be transparent with you. Our subcommittee, which is made up of internal stakeholders, Ms. Jackson, and a number of others, has been meeting and helped steering the PD work. As of yet this year, we have yet to convene the larger committee inclusive of all of our subcommittees. And I think that, that's the truth. And, we've been, this actually might be a good opportunity for us to bring them back into the fold as we embark on the equity audit. So that's something I'll put on my to-do list. It's a large, what's challenging about it is it's a large group and it's broken into subcommittees. So, the logistics of managing all of that virtually versus brick and mortar has been a challenge, but it's a challenge we need to overcome. So we'll get on that.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Robin Iserlis, if you can follow the prompt on your screen, please.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Robin Iserlis, 22 Yale Terrace. So I listened to your comments, Dr. Cascone, enthusiastically, but I'm left with a great deal of confusion that hopefully you can clarify. I'm not really clear on the role of the Hanover Research Company that you mentioned and how it connects to the equity audit. I looked up this company and I was really quite discouraged by what I saw. On the listing of their leadership did not seem to reflect a diverse company at all. 7 of the 9 leaders with pictures of themselves appeared to be white, and 6 of those were men. A few other troubling nuggets from their website under the founder's bio. It said, whether we are helping a company generate millions of dollars of incremental revenue through successful market explorations, or we are encouraging a school district to cut a program that is not serving students well. There's a few other nuggets like this. I'm not exactly sure what Hanover is. It doesn't seem from their opening page that diversity and equity are their primary concerns. I'd like to know what the vetting process was for this company. Were any minority-owned companies, or better yet, nonprofits, a priority in the consideration of who you'll be working with? It seems very divorced from the equity and inclusion issues, the ones that you just mentioned in your comments, and many of which we've been talking about for years in the district. I took a look at some nearby districts, and South Orange Maplewood is working with Temple University on their inclusion efforts. As for the health expert panel I attended last week, perhaps I was at a very different panel. I walked away very discouraged. I was hoping that the forum would clarify for me the public health justification for opening schools. Instead, I heard comments from experts that were so incredibly disturbing. One referred to the classroom as a controlled environment. Another talked about rather coldly that morbidity isn't a problem with COVID in a week where we just mourned the over 400,000 COVID-related deaths nationally, and to a town that has had 206 reported COVID deaths. Just one example of the many ways facts are interpretive. Social scientists have been troubled by the way we're counting morbidity itself. So facts are interpretive. I was hoping to hear more from the panelists around the health risks around transmission with respect to ventilation and air quality in our schools, given the age of the buildings. I recently had a training around opening my higher ed workplace, and the primary health concerns discussed were around the ventilation systems, the necessity of airflow, air changes per hour, airflow direction, appropriately sized filters, etc. I'm curious about how will these important safety measures be attended to moving forward with the opening of schools. And like the other person, I'd also like to know a little bit more about this dashboard. How often will it be updated? What information will be available to us, and how will the community be informed if and when a student or staff tests positive? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sirlis. I will. You've thrown a lot at me, and I'm going to do my best to respond as completely and as authoritatively as possible. What I would, and I'm not sure if you were present for the entire presentation on Hanover, but I would ask staff, I would ask community members prior to drawing conclusions based upon a cursory view of the website to review the presentation when it's posted, to review the work they've done, to hear from the partners in the school district where they've worked, you know, and draw conclusions from that. I can tell you that there were diverse members on our vetting committee. Ms. Jackson was one of the primary people involved in that. You know, I'm confident that that what we're going to get out of this company is, and I mentioned this in my presentation, is the analytics. This is a company that's working on us in helping us in gathering our data, as far as the analysis of the data, as far as the processing of the data, the developing of the action plan, the delivery of relevant PD, whether it be around instructional strategies and techniques, mindset, or curriculum revision. Those are all aspects of the plan in which we will branch out and look at other partners who might be appropriate to work with us on that. But what I would ask is just that, as opposed to rushing to judgment based upon just an initial review of the website, that you take a look at the materials that I put up and reserve judgment until you've had an opportunity to review that. The other thing I would say is, and I did mention, is that, you know, Hanover's is not singularly focused on equity, although they're doing excellent work on equity in some very diverse, forward-thinking districts. They are a large research think tank that operates in a variety of spaces, including K-12 and higher ed, but not exclusively in K-12 and higher ed. But again, that information will be posted tomorrow, and I would just encourage people to take a closer look at that and draw conclusions after you've had an opportunity to review their work. As far as, you know, and I'm not going to, you know, go into, time would not allow for me to reiterate in detail all of the work that we've done along the lines of ventilation. We have worked very closely with our architects, engineers, buildings and grounds, the WOEA's own Health and Safety Committee, to ensure that all of our classrooms satisfy a 5-point checklist. And that is that they have a functioning blower, that they have comfort, that they have a replaced filter, and that they have a means for fresh air intake into the room, satisfying the ventilation requirement. We also added an additional step to that, which was adding the bipolar needle point ionization technology, whether it be to the blower unit itself or a mobile unit. When taking into consideration the significantly reduced occupancy, you know, we have taken the steps and confirmed with our experts that we've satisfied the requirement for adequate ventilation in our schools. We've actually done quite a bit more than many school districts have done that have teachers and students in their facilities. You know, going back to you know, the health experts, and we can certainly in the wake of that panel, I was thinking that this is, maybe something that we may even want to do on a fairly regular basis, on a, a monthly basis, where we bring, where questions come up, and, if there's anything that wasn't answered, we can bring additional people up to kind of discuss and talk about. Again, I'm just going to kind of, and I think, if you're alluding to the comments of, of Dr. Joseph's, and I don't know him. He was kind of referred to me, and he was gracious enough on short notice to come to the panel, but he didn't strike me as a cold person or an insensitive person. I mean, he's very data oriented, and so perhaps in his clinical kind of data oriented mindset, perhaps that came across that way. But I think he spoke to his own personal experience as a COVID survivor. And I think was just simply stating that, depending upon your age and, pre-existing conditions you have, you're more at risk for developing serious complications. And again, I mean, I think that, as the superintendent, again, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a public health expert. And so, the purpose of the panel was even to sort of reinforce in my own mind, and for me personally, and there are many people with whom I've spoken, and the board can share their own thoughts during their board reports about what they thought about the panel. But at the culmination of the first portion of that panel discussion, I certainly did not hear any perspective or testimony that was cautioning me against opening. I think they spoke about mitigation strategies. I think they spoke about being aware of people who might be at greater risk, which is why in the wake of that, the school district has taken a more liberal approach to allowing workplace accommodations. But in the end, I have to listen to, whether it's the county or the local officials. At this point, there's no advisory coming to me from either entity saying that, saying like they did in November, which was, we're not advising you open. That's not happening now. And they say, well, why is that? I don't know. All I know is that that's happening. And it's based upon the data that they're seeing. So, and as far as the dashboard goes, I spoke a little bit about that. It'll be weekly. We'll update it on a weekly basis every Friday. Like I said, it will contain, at a bare minimum, it'll contain the cases that are present in each of the schools, both staff and students, during that week, and, cumulatively over time.
Okay, thank you. Next, Elizabeth Redwine, if you can follow the prompt on your screen and give us your name and address for the record, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, it's Elizabeth Redwine from 10 Cobain Terrace. And I just had a few questions. I'm hoping I misheard, but it sounded like Ms. Mendez was talking about hugging and hugs, which I think we can all agree goes against any social distancing guidelines. Also, it sounds like the expectation is that students are going to interact with each other and with the teacher while the teacher is also teaching over the laptop. So I'm just, as an educator myself, I can't imagine how I'm trying as hard as I can to imagine how that can happen. And with the 6 feet between them, I can't imagine how that could happen. I'm also concerned about the buses. I drive my 4 kids in my van, and I would never know if they have a mask on or not if I'm driving safely. And I'm hearing a lot of talk about unity and some mentions of courage, and I'm not hearing any mention of the many parents who had a different kind of courage, had a courage to decide to keep their children home because they felt that the numbers put the community more at risk by sending children into the schools. So I just want to acknowledge that there's different forms of courage, and that if we're going to talk about unity, we should acknowledge the 50%, it sounds like, of the town who made this other choice. And so far, I haven't heard any mention of those people so I just wanted to mention that. And then what is in place if I hope if, unfortunately, the data will show us that it's a when, but I'm really hoping it's an if. I know we had 7 cases in Soma during the week that they opened last week. So what's in place if infection starts for mental health for those students and teachers who might be infected? And I've had some family experience with this with a sister who works in a school system. So the big concern in her school system is the children who live in multi-generational households or even just with their own parents had to quarantine in their own rooms and could only go to the bathroom and had to be alone in their own rooms. And this created an emergency situation for mental health in my sister's town. So I just wanted to know what was in place for that. And then I just wanted to end by thanking the board for hearing me out, thanking the superintendent, and most of all, my sincere thanks to my children's teachers and school counselors. And my math is off, I think, but I think we're talking about 28 people because I have 4 different kids who have made this educational experience remote incredibly rewarding. And I cannot thank them enough. So my extreme gratitude to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Redwine. I appreciate those questions. I think, you know, what I imagine Mrs. de Mendez was referring to is, you know, what I observed, you know, when I was at Hazel School was, you know, we saw kind of the hugs between parents and children as they kind of, you know, as they said goodbye and started their first day. I didn't see any teachers hugging students, although I can tell you that when I visited the preschool disabled class last week, the cutest little preschooler just felt inclined to come and give me a hug. And I gotta tell you, that was the best moment I've had in a long time, was hugging that little girl. She was so cute. Anyway, but I think that's what Mrs. de Mendez was referring to. And right, Ms. Red, the interaction. So I think it's, you know, is it going to look like it's looked in the past? No. Is it, you know, is it going to be, you know, a diminished form of interaction on some level? But I can tell you, like, just from my own personal experience and I'm going to, you know, go back to Hazel School, even my own personal experience in interacting with teachers and students and parents, walking out of the front of the school. I was playing principal for the morning. You know, walking out the front of the school and saying hello to parents and kids. Hey, I love your sneakers. Like all those kind of just little things, I think are the kinds of things that matter, that have an impact. But you're right, and by no means, the two sides of this conversation have to be, and I'm very cognizant of it as an educator, that as we move into this hybrid situation, we have to keep and we're asking our parents to keep a very critical and close eye on the degree to which the virtual experience is diminished as a result of the hybrid experience commencing. That's something we need to look at. It's something we need to evaluate. And if we see that happening, we have to figure out how to do it better if we start to see the quality slide, because we will not forsake our students who are at home learning virtually any more than we're going to forsake our students who need to be in. And you have my commitment on that. And we are looking for that feedback. And you're right. I mean, it's there. Courage abounds everywhere. You know, there are courageous choices, and thank you for saying that. There are courageous choices being made every day by everyone in their own right. But we will not abandon or forsake our kids that are at home. And I have to tell you, like I mentioned in my opening report, Mrs. Redwine, is that I had several teachers who said, I'm not worried about coronavirus, but I am worried about how to orchestrate this hybrid piece. But will there be a learning curve initially? A little bit. Have we done good training? I think we have. You know, they will become better and better at it day by day, but we will not abandon, we will not forsake our virtual students. And you have my promise to that. As far as, you know, and there's a couple of threads relative to that piece on students and teacher mental health. Obviously, as I had mentioned in my report, we are, you know, we are messaging out to our teachers, availing them with resources, both internal and also, you know, reminding them and providing them access to resources that they have available through, you know, their healthcare and their healthcare providers. What I've seen, and I have to really commend in particular our school counseling department is when we become aware, when our counseling department becomes aware of a situation in a home where you have a hardship there. I mean, I've seen everything from school counselors going out to the house. We've done food deliveries to the house, and trying to support that family in any way we can, during that time. I've seen a lot of efforts like that. As far as access to community healthcare, I think, in other words, for parents, I think that's a soft spot right there. And I think that's something where, I'll work with not only our director of school counseling, but also our parent liaison that we're working through Rutgers, Mr. Cano, and see about putting out to families additional information about social service resources that they have at their disposal. And I think that might have been it. Did I miss anything?
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try one more time. Maria Breslin, there is going to be a prompt on your screen. You can push it and allowing yourself to unmute yourself. Okay. So Maria, unfortunately, I'm not sure how to have you speak here. I can bring you over as a panelist and turn off your camera if you would like to do that. If you can just lower your hand and raise your hand again. Okay, I did not see that action. So we're going to go to Rachel Goodman. If you can follow the prompt on your screen and give us your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Rachel Goodman. I live at 136 Walker Road. And I've listened to a lot tonight and I appreciate it, but I've not yet been convinced that we should be reopening at this time, especially upon reviewing available data on child and school infection rates. Per the American Academy of Pediatrics, as of last week, there have been over 165,000 new child COVID cases alone across 43 reporting states since children returned to school, and have seen a 16% increase in child COVID infections over the past 2 weeks. Of those new infections, 0.06% resulted in death, and 0.06% represents 100 dead children. And those numbers aren't new to this month. If you look to Brown University's COVID-19 school response dashboard, which tracks fall semester data and participating districts, you can see that there is undoubtedly a link between reopened schools and increased COVID-19 transmission for students and faculty, no matter the cohort sizes, mask wearing, or air ventilation improvements. Between September and December, student staff infection rates jumped up 620% and 440% respectively. And those are massive numbers, and each percentage point represents actual students and staff and their suffering, which just proves, regardless of scale, opening the schools right now without widespread vaccination leads to higher rates of transmission in schools and the communities they serve. And I think the superintendent rightly brought up the fact that our government's message is inconsistent and confusing, and that the narrative doesn't make sense because the previous administration did not prioritize reopening schools above all else and did not prioritize ending community spread. And we see that at every level of government. We are seeing our country and our state and our town push a falsified both sides narrative and see politicians rely on rallying metaphors of victory and war to persuade us to move forward no matter what. These are rhetorical fallacies that effectively deaden us to what should be an emotional response to mass death. And it allows us to push off what makes us uncomfortable about the horrors of contracting COVID in favor of focusing on the positives so we can feel bullish and a sense of safety so we can move forward. One statistic and comment from last week's town hall that has not left me is a panelist who kept repeating that only 200,000 military members were infected and only 200 died. So what's the danger? Except those were 200 students, siblings, parents, friends, people who mean something to someone, just like our teachers, staff, and students are people who mean something to someone in this meeting and in this community. And death isn't even the whole picture. 10% of COVID patients never fully recover. And at the least conservative survey, it's 75% of patients who never recover. So that includes children who will never recover, who will not be able to walk to their kitchen without getting winded, will not be able to participate in sports, who will not be able to participate in PE. Distancing ourselves from these truths seems like the right choice. It's certainly the American way that we cope with mass death every day. And it's just simply the easy choice instead. It's easier to give in and say that if our neighbors are doing it, we should too. It's easier to say that only a small percentage of our community will get sick or suffer. So it's for the greater good to forge on. There is no greater good when you're sacrificing people who would otherwise live to return to a normal that no longer exists. So I just want to know why it has to be now. Why can't we wait for the Biden administration's coming guidelines and the $130 billion reopening stimulus they announced today? Why can't we wait until New Jersey is vaccinating more than just 25,000 people a day? Why can't we wait until West Orange has more than 0 vaccine doses on hand? I just want to know why we simply can't wait and why it has to be now.
Yeah. Ms. Goodman, you're passionate and persuasive speaker, and I appreciate that. You know, I think one of the things that's been, I think, dizzying for all of us is the just the avalanche of data, studies, metrics, which we have, you know, we have thrown at us. I would agree. I sort of winced a little myself when, you know, the death of 200 service members was kind of offered up as a positive. I wouldn't have, I didn't consider that a positive, even though it was a relatively small percentage of the overall number. So I would concur with you on that. You know, but you know, someone sent me a study from, you know, from Denmark, and so how do I, as a non-public health official, when you know, and everything you're telling me on some level makes sense, and yet when I compare it with the local data that I get, you know, and you know, I get you know, the data from the county, I get the data, and again, I'm going to refer to the monthly situational awareness report, the weekly situational awareness report that I get from the county sheriff's office. When we look at, you know, our local positivity rate, you know, I have to look at that and say that's local data, and you look at the governor loosening guidelines on schools. So where does the truth lie? And how am I, as a non-public health expert, supposed to make sense of that when the objective of the school district is to try and get some students in to, you know, to ease some of that loss, some of that isolation that we know they're encountering. I think, you know, what we also heard from that town hall was this idea of mitigation strategies, right? So, you know, yes, when we listened to some folks, they talked about the fact that they haven't left the house since March. And you know what? I believe them. I believe that there are certain people who have sequestered in their home since March.
For the record, I've sequestered in my home.
Yeah. And I believe it. And I know that there's some people out there that for whatever reason have, and that's personal choice. And I respect that. You know, but you know, the vast majority of people, and I'm not suggesting that they're better because they do. I'm just simply saying that there are, you know, interacting, engaging in society in some way, even but just for the necessities of life. And how are we able to do that safely? How are we able to go to any of the locations we go safely? And it really comes down to utilizing the scientifically proven mitigation strategies that are out there, right? So when you, like, if you go into a classroom and, you know, you go to a school and you see the process by which that happens, and you see, you know, very small numbers of students coming in, you know, teachers distance from students, masks, you know, thermal screenings, all those things in place, and you look at those risk mitigations, and you ensure that the folks that are in the classrooms are not placing themselves at risk due to a comorbidity or an existing condition that makes them higher risk. And also the fact that when we talk about the children, you know, those, we're not requiring children to come in, right? So parents are, you know, are making, you know, that choice to send their child into school. I know that I am as well. You know, my children are in a couple days a week as well. So, you know, in the end, I have to depend upon the local data, because I'm not qualified to triangulate it with other data sources and say one is more reliable or valid than the other. And relative to like to why now and other neighboring districts are doing it, I mean, I didn't make my decision in November to postpone. And I took a lot of criticism and heat for that because there were a lot of districts that were open. So why aren't we like this town or that town? They're open. Why are we not open? So I've never made my decisions based upon what other towns are doing. I tried to base my decisions, not on emotion, not on fear, but just simply on the information, the data that I have in front of me and the preparations that we've made. And again, I will tell you that my experiences in the school today, Ms. Goodman, were, it was not of a terrified staff. It was of a staff that was, by and large, appeared to be ready and prepared and positive about themselves being there. That being said, I will never stop trying to better my understanding, because don't think that your impassioned pleas and the data that you're presenting doesn't continue to drive me to better understand why I see, just as a layman, not as a professional, but as a layman, a disconnect between what I see locally and all of these larger studies and things that I see. I continue to ask questions even up to today, trying to consult with public health experts to help me understand, to recalibrate and understand, is this the right decision? Am I doing the right thing? This is a question that I'm faced with every day.
I mean, I would argue that the reason that there's a disconnect between what the government is saying and what the data is saying is because the government is committed to capitalist production and the fact that we are conditioned as a society to move forward no matter what. And that is contrary to public health.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Goodman.
Not for discussion now, I understand, but
right.
That's something to consider.
We're just going to.
Mr. Scales, you muted yourself somehow.
Gosh, we're not able to have a dialogue at this time, but we thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Deborah Harvest. If you can please follow the prompt that's on your screen.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I wish to address an agenda item that was listed.
Sorry, Ms. Harvest, we just need your name and address for the record before you start.
Deborah Harvest, 16 Elliott Place.
Thank you so much.
Okay. I wish to address an agenda item that was listed to be discussed during your executive session. During the January 13th meeting, a former board member was approved to serve as a volunteer consultant to assist the board with negotiating with a variety of associations within the district. Collective bargaining agreements, as well as the terms and conditions of employment, are confidential and discussed during executive sessions or during negotiations. I do not understand why a layperson is privy to this information. I am also appalled that a school district would marginalize the power of its voting community by appointing someone who the community did not support for another term. By moving forward with that resolution, you have decided on your own to circumvent the election process. Although this position is stated as volunteer, there are many other past board members who may have liked to apply for that created position. I truly believe that what you're doing is unethical and perhaps illegal. Our tax dollars are already helping to pay for a board attorney that could be the lead negotiator, or you could have hired a labor consultant. However, what you should not have done was extend the number of board members to 6 and provide someone with information that is confidential. So I do want to seek some clarification. So in full disclosure, I plan to submit the resolution and the details related to the resolution to the State Board of Education, as well as the Commissioner of Education for advisement of action. I just feel that that was really an underhanded thing to do to the community. Thank you.
Ms. Harvest, Terry Trigg Scales here. I regret that it appears that we did something underhanded. And I think, no, you did not send me the email, it was someone else. But complete transparency here is that it was my idea. I served on the committee with Mr. Alper. And in my opinion, I didn't feel as if I had enough background information for the last couple of years. to be as effective as I could be, knowing that we had one new member, Ms. Tunnicliffe, who was joining me. Mr. Alper is only sitting with us during the time that we are meeting with the other negotiations committee. We have checked with our attorney. In no way were we undermining, or as I said, I regret that it appears that we are undermining the will of the community. That was not the intent at all. Certainly not. Whether you believe that or not, that is the God's honest truth. I felt that it would support the board in its negotiations, and I welcome your inquiry. We know that New Jersey School Boards Association gives local boards of education the latitude to invite whomever they choose to sit on their negotiations committee. And this board agreed with my recommendation, and that is what we're currently doing. If we find out something otherwise, we'll deal with it at that time. But as far as we are concerned, what we're doing is not unethical, nor is it illegal.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Mark Maniscalco. If you can follow the prompt on your screen, please.
Good evening again. Thank you for the decision to be more lenient with staff members who truly need accommodations. It's a far more humane way to do business, and we do appreciate it. As to school reopening, know that we all want the same thing. We want to be back in school with our students, but we want to be back safely. Most staff want the chance to be vaccinated first. After all, they want to live. At last week's town hall, it was suggested by one of the experts that this would take 47 weeks, I think was the number he used. He was wrong. He was wrong. Today, actually tonight at around 6 p.m., I went on the Essex County website and registered for a vaccine. I will be inoculated Wednesday, less than 48 hours after registration. Not 47 weeks, just 2 days. We can pause. We can pivot. We can wait just a little longer. We can be safe. Lives are at stake. Thank you.
Okay. Am I moving forward, or are you responding? I'm sorry, Dr. Scott.
No, just taking it in. Thank you.
Oh, okay, okay, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Maniscalco.
Okay. Next, Alexandra Mizrahi, if you can follow the prompt on your screen, please.
Thank you, Alexandra Mizrahi, 35 Washington Avenue. Thank you for the change of mind. As you state, you will be doing on my last question of last meeting. I really appreciate it a lot. Hearing the staff will be allowed for accommodation to be in place due to their emotional and medical needs, which is not only their right, also on the CARE Act, ADA, and the Title IX. Procuring an update dashboard and transparency is imperative, is paramount. And I know, Cascon, you will be securing this now, as your commitment when you were hired was to keep transparency at any cost. Lastly, today President Biden gave new and final guidelines to return to school, and those were not reopened as we did today. I want to get more information in that regards, as I agree that the staff should be at least give the opportunity not only of their accommodation by law, but also to be able to get vaccination before going back to school for the benefit of themselves and our children and the whole community as whole. So thank you for taking in consideration them as a part of a stakeholder, as I've been requesting from day one. And let's make sure that the dashboard is, I don't think the weekly should be, but of course I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job, but let's try to see ways that we can give that information out for them to also be safe and secure and not feeling the fear to go to school. I think that is as important for them as it is for the kids. So thank you for everything.
Thank you, Ms. Mizrahi. Just to kind of piggyback, follow up on what you said. There's nothing gained by being dishonest. There's nothing gained by a lack of transparency. I've been in the profession long enough and seen the opposite of that, destroy people, destroy communities. So there's no, and particularly when we're talking about, people's safety and well-being, I would never, I don't know what decent person would ever think of doing something like that. So you can certainly count on that. I think as far as the dashboard goes, the dashboard would be updated at the end of the week, similar to how the State Department of Health's numbers are updated at the end of the week. But certainly, if there were cases that occurred over the course of the day, and I had a chance to check my email. I did receive notification from a principal that we did have a case, so I'll be sending communication out on that of a staff member at a school. But over the course of the week, the transparency would be through those community correspondences that went home in writing, and at the end of the week would be the dashboard would be updated with the current cases. So that is something that the community can definitely count on. Guarantee that's going to happen. I have our technology department and our nursing supervisor working on threshing out the details for it this week. So, and as far as the vaccines go, I mean, I think that it's something that obviously the plan which we've been moving forward with as of today is that which I've recommended and that which the board supports. But we will continue to process the feedback that we receive and determine whether a change of course is merited.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer Busser, if you can follow the prompt on your screen and give us your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Jennifer Beezer, 82 Lawrence Avenue.
Jennifer, I'm sorry. I think I've mispronounced your name every time. And
That's
okay.
okay.
I'm so sorry.
I guess first I would like to echo everything Rachel Goodman said way more eloquently than I can say it. And I too think it's too soon. We're right on the cusp, and we can wait just a little bit and make it safer for everyone. I am very happy to hear that the district is revisiting the approach to providing accommodations to teachers. I would ask that you share the number of teachers who ask for accommodations, the accommodations that are granted and those that are refused, and that, how many teachers are we leaving and replacing with subs because of this? We've been talking about mitigation strategies, and Dr. Cascone said he can't ask people not to go to a birthday party with 25 people. And while I realize you can't stop someone from going to a birthday party with 25 people or punish them for it, I think you absolutely can and must ask people not to go to the birthday party. Part of prioritizing school means reducing other risk that you are bringing into school with you. And you mentioned also you've been in, working with our Office of Emergency Management people and the town health department. But at the same time, they are opening up recreational indoor basketball programs for kids, which will bring together different cohorts of kids who may then go into the schools. And this is all just exponentially multiplying the number of contacts people are having. And I'm not really sure why that should be happening at this point. Lastly, you just mentioned that there had been a case of a staff member today in one of the schools. Is that going to result in a quarantine at that school? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Busser. I can certainly work with, our director of personnel if that's information that, obviously the specifics of the information would be confidential, but I could, speak with the board and determine if that were something that the board would be interested in releasing, but we could certainly provide that data. I do think that you raise a good point about, and you're right, and I will say it, you know, which is, and I said it, you know, at the town hall. I was fairly direct in my charge to the community to do the right thing. And so I'll say it again, we need our community to do the right thing and think twice about, you know, intermingling and bringing people together and raising the possibility of spread. So I will absolutely give that charge, and as the superintendent asked for people's to create that pact and ask people to respect that for sure. I think you raise a good point, and I think the idea of you know, I have looked at the guidelines as they are in the COVID risk matrix, and you know, if a community is designated as in the high range of risk, and here we get back to what does one metric say versus another. Now our local and our county reveal that, you know, indicate that we're in the moderate level, but I need to get clarification on that once and for all, and get confirmation from the county department as well, that that they stand behind their data that they share on a weekly basis, which designates West Orange in the moderate range. If we're in a high range, then that comes with additional restrictions relative to recreational things and things of that nature. So I will be meeting with township officials to discuss that, and I think it's a fair question. I can't deny the reason and the logic of that question that you've asked, Ms. Busser. And as far as the quarantine piece, what I understand, and I'm still processing the details, is there were no students involved. It was a teacher, and had close contact with two teachers. So there would be a quarantining of three teachers, basically, as a result of that case. And just in terms of the subs, I just want to clarify that if we were putting teachers out on leave, that would ultimately lead to a long-term certificated sub-teacher taking over, and that teacher would no longer be in the classroom in any way, shape, or form, whether it be in person or virtual. If we talk about an accommodation, that teacher would continue without cessation to offer the virtual learning, but there would be a certificated teacher in the classroom to facilitate that experience for the students who were on site.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Katie Schaub. If you can please follow the prompt on your screen and give us your name and address for the record.
Hello, everybody. My name is Catherine Schaub. I live at 59 Rollinson Street. I am speaking tonight in objection to in-person learning and requesting that our schools stay remote until more people in our town are vaccinated. In an email to me last week, Dr. Cascone wrote that he's making his decision based on facts, not fear. The true fact of the matter is that although there are studies that show little or no risk of spread in schools, there are also plenty of studies that show a much more significant risk of spread in schools. Both sides of this debate can easily cite empirical evidence that supports their position. This is because neither the CDC nor the US Department of Ed are systematically tracking school outbreaks. In fact, most US studies on the risk of school spread are based on either data collected by the CDC from children in the community rather than a school setting, which introduces confounding variables, or based on incomplete data collected by academics, which leads to inconclusive results. This is all without even getting into the obvious issue that it is incredibly difficult to accurately track COVID in children, given they are largely asymptomatic and thus unlikely to be tested, but can still actively infect others, including their own families and our teachers. As of right now, the most comprehensive database tracking outbreaks in the US schools is from Brown University, which Rachel Goodman already pointed out. And it does in fact show that cases go up both in students and faculty when schools are open, even with mitigating factors such as limited cohorts, improved ventilation, mask mandates, and social distancing. Given the propensity for unreliable data in the studies related to school spread and how much of the evidence seems to conflict, I can't help but wonder why the superintendent The experts he convened for his panel and our Board of Education seemed so intent on focusing unilaterally on only the evidence that supports their position of reopening. The other night, when I attended the town hall, I was disappointed rather than heartened to hear the only dissenting opinions were from the community, not just from lay people, as Dr. Cascone has suggested in correspondence, but from at least one medical doctor and one public health professional, both of whom called out the data being used by our superintendent to justify reopening, as well as his experts' analysis of certain studies. The experts casually acknowledged that death is a risk of reopening, but an acceptable risk they equated to death from car accidents. These panelists also flagged that people still contract and die from COVID, even when vaccinated, as an argument against waiting until vaccinations are more plentiful before opening, but seem to completely gloss over that less people will contract COVID and less people will die once a majority of our community is vaccinated. I ask, why not wait until vaccinations allow our schools to be significantly safer instead of just relying on unreliable evidence that it is safe now? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Jeremiah Salinas. If you can follow the prompt on your screen and give us your name and address for the record, please.
Jeremiah Salinas, 7 Crystal Ave.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. First of all, I just want to say that I can't thank you enough for everything that you do with having these meetings and trying to keep the entire community abreast of the situation and trying to make a decision that's a very tough decision. But with the recent report from the state government that says that we are at the peak of the second wave, opening the schools right now is, in my opinion, not the best idea. I think that this is something that the district should lead, should take a look into, and should lead the district into taking all the precautions that are necessary in order to make sure that everybody's safe, including advising the community to not intermingle and to not come together, as this can and will have impacts in our school. I am a bit concerned that there wasn't a district announcement made regarding the positive case in one of our schools today up until this point. With such important information that needs to be provided to the community in order for everybody to make a decision as to whether they should go get tested or to make sure that they are taking the necessary precautions. This information needs to come out a lot faster. With today being the first day of coming back to school, I believe that this is something that we need to address immediately. Another thing that I think we need to address is what is going to happen to the students that are reporting to school that are under the supervision of those teachers that have to quarantine? And what is going to happen to the students that are in direct contact with an individual that becomes infected or tests positive? Because all of these questions are questions that are very legitimate questions, because we're talking about the health and safety of not just the teachers, but the children as well, right? We have to do a better job in that sense. And just like the district made a judgment to open the schools and bring kids back, I hope that we have the same decision-making, hopefully not, if we begin to see cases rise in our school buildings or if individual cases pop up. Now, we have to make sure that, again, information is provided to the community in a timely manner. I like the idea of having the dashboard, but I think that once a week is not enough. I think it needs to be done a little bit more faster and a little bit more often. Thank you.
Right. So duly noted, Mr. Salinas, and I've just made a note of myself to look at changing the protocol for communicating with the community. I received notification and went back in my email, received notification approximately 5:30 this evening, and have been involved with the board. I think it might make more sense for the school-based communications to come from the principal, because I can't guarantee that I can tend to a community communication instantaneously, and principals might have a little bit more ability to do that in an expeditious fashion. So that's duly noted. I will tell you that a community notification letter is not a requirement under CDC or DOH guidelines. It's something that is recommended and that school districts have been doing. The most important thing and what is required is that through the contact tracing interview, any individuals who are identified as being in close contact and therefore requiring quarantine or testing absolutely and obligatorily need to be contacted. But they're the only ones that mandatorily need to be contacted. We do send a community notification out really just as a courtesy. And one could argue that, over the cost benefit of, sending out a community notification of a case, when in this particular case, it impacted 3 staff members, and you might be unduly alarming an entire school's community over 3 cases. But nevertheless, we err on the side of conservative and transparency for the community. But I do believe we'll need to reevaluate who leads that communication, because I'm one person and I can only do so much, at any given time, and it's so quickly. But I think that's well stated. As far as I appreciate the feedback, and you're not the first person to say it relative to the frequency of the dashboard. So I will take that into consideration, and in my conversations with those staff members who are working on it, administrators who are working on it with me, and we'll look at practices of other school districts and see if there's kind of a standard operating practice for that. Mr. Scales, I feel like I forgot something. Did I miss something? No? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Lisa Tuzo. If you can follow the prompt on the screen and give us your name and address for the record.
Hello, Lisa Tuzo. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Lisa Tuzo, 15 Carter Road, also a library media specialist at Liberty Middle School. A comment was made that, in observation of the teachers going back, that they were happy and smiling. That is part of our profession, to let the children be safe and secure. I know when I go back and I see my children, they will not see my apprehensions and my fears, but they will see a supportive educator there in the schools with them. I just want to make sure that it's understood that, we are smiling on the outside, but a little fearful, not a little fearful, a lot fearful on the inside, but our children will never see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tuzo. I appreciate that. And I thank you for all the excellent work you're doing down there in the Liberty Media Center. I know you're also a valuable partner with the local town library. So I'm familiar with your service and the work you do for our district. So I thank you for that. I'm not the oldest guy rolling around here. I'm not the youngest guy. I've been knocking around in this world for long enough and interacted with enough people. And I think a good judge of emotion. And I understand what you're saying. And in terms of, teachers do that even in times, non-pandemic times, though they may be experiencing, maybe personal challenges. They put their smile on and they do the right thing for kids, which makes them the special people they are. I'm speaking more in terms of my individual interactions, more just kind of kibitzing as I was with staff members prior to when the students got there, and watching the teachers interact with one another. Now, granted, I was just at one elementary school, and perhaps that was, exceptional, and maybe it was different in other places, but just in observing the interactions with me, the interactions between themselves, I'm not going to say that it was exactly the way it might be under normal circumstances, but I saw a lot of good positive energy, between the staff. I should mention, that I've also received, some correspondences from, a number of correspondences from teachers who've written me and said they're looking forward to coming back. They're looking forward to seeing their kids. And some other messages which I'm going to keep private because I just don't think it's constructive to the overall climate, but which just expressed a very different perspective than some of the ones that we've heard. And not that it minimizes the value of either, but just that there is a diversity of thought within our very large workforce of over 1,000 teachers. We haven't heard from them publicly, but they're out there. I just think it's important to know that there is a diversity of thought amongst our teachers.
Thank you. We have one other person raising their hand, but I'm just going to call a final call to anyone who wanted to speak on agenda items. Now would be the time to raise your hand as we call on this last person here. Lauren Price Steierman, if you can please follow the prompt on your screen and give us your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is my first time calling in. I'm Lauren Price Steierman. I live at 62 O'Connor Circle. First, I wanted to thank my son's teachers over at Edison and the principal and the administration. I think you guys are doing a wonderful job. But I also want to thank Dr. Cascone and the board for really doing your due diligence, being transparent, and being the voice of reason. I also thank you for asking experts for their guidance when you feel that your knowledge falls short. Tonight, I thank you for giving all families a choice to either have their children in school or to keep them at home. This is a choice that no West Orange family has had until now. And thank you for waiting to give that choice until what experts have deemed as safe and to continue to monitor the safety. And as you announced tonight, thank you for giving our wonderful educators more opportunities to teach from home. What's important is that governmental leadership, in this case, you, the Board of Ed and Superintendent, gives constituents a choice. That's what's hopefully different as we look forward in America. Otherwise, what type of country are we living in? It's a choice, and I think you've made an educated one. And in this fragmented media environment, anybody can look to their source to confirm their opinions. But we look to our government to be a little bit less jaded and to be a little bit less opinionated on that. We're all going to have our own opinions on what's right for our families, but thank you for giving the West Orange families a choice. That's it.
Thank you. And we have no other people raising their hand at this time.
Yeah, appreciate all the feedback, and I know I can speak for the board, and I'm sure they'll speak to it a bit in their board reports as well. Is that none of this is easy. It's actually excruciatingly difficult, soul-crushingly difficult. But in the end, it's trying to find that middle way, right? And just kind of speaking about the vaccines piece for a second, and I think the panelists, assertion was that, and it was really connecting to kind of supply chain, which is if you look at the estimated number of doses that New Jersey is going to receive, on I think it was a weekly basis, and you kind of extrapolated that out, it could be up to, will it be that long? I mean, that's almost a year's time. Probably not. I think it would be significantly less time than that. I think is the premise that the supplies of the vaccine, are not there. I mean, I really want to come back to that premise, of ensuring that the folks who are in our buildings are not at high risk due to a pre-existing condition, and all the things we've done. I mean, I think I feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone. When was it just a dream for the last 8 months that, we've, of what we've been spending all this time doing, all the resources and the money and the time, that we've placed into doing this, and and the acknowledgement that, like, listening to feedback, interactive feedback with our stakeholders, particularly our staff members, and saying, we don't feel comfortable with that. Okay, then, we'll adjust to that. We'll ensure that it's 6 feet. Well, we don't feel comfortable kids aren't in masks. We'll do universal masking. I mean, it's been that interactive process throughout this to try and to limit the number of students in our buildings. Again, 25% capacity at the middle schools and the high school. Many high schools that have been in for the entire year have been at 50%. So we've really tried to listen and to really take as conservative approach as we can to lead to the greatest degree of safety in our buildings and those mitigation strategies that, that we've been guided to do, that the medical, all these things that we're doing from a mitigation standpoint. I mean, these aren't things that I came up with as an educator with a teaching degree and ed leadership degree. I mean, these are things that have been provided to us by, the CDC, by the Department of Health, that we've had a fidelity to and we've put in place. And so I just, I know it pains the board. It's difficult for the board as it is difficult for me, for us to understand that there's the perception out there that we would wantonly and negligently, put our staff members in a situation that is inherently dangerous and difficult. And that's a point on which I think we're going to agree to disagree, based upon all the mitigation strategies we have in place, and now taking a more liberal approach to accommodations. We've made our buildings as safe as we possibly can, and it is with a degree of confidence that we open them back up. But again, I'm going to continue to consult with county, local experts. I'm going to continue to seek clarity amidst an environment of disconnects from the state and the county to help clarify my understanding as we continue to move forward. And again, we'll pivot, we'll pause if necessary, and be as transparent as we can be in the process. Mr. Trixie-Ells?
Thank you, Dr. Cascone. I want to just look out at the board, and you can tell me what you're feeling. Do you want to do a response, a report now? Would you like to take a 10-minute break? We've been sitting here for 4 hours, and I think our responses might be a bit sharper if we get to stand up and have the blood circulate a little bit. Yes? Okay, so Ms. Graf-Tiza, can you give us 10 minutes and we'll be right back?
Absolutely. If we can have the panelists turn off their cameras as well as their microphones, and we'll convene back. It is 10:28 on my time, so we'll come back at 10:38, and we'll take a short break. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Graf-Tiza, and thank you to the public, those of you who hung in there with us. Before we get to our regular agenda, I would just like to make a statement on behalf of the board. We are confident at this juncture that we have taken all steps, that Dr. Cascone and his leadership team have taken all steps to ensure the health and safety of both our students and our staff in our buildings. We will continue to monitor the health and safety of our students until such time that we believe there needs to be a change. Again, we are confident that we have taken all the steps. We have gone from the ventilation, the PPE. We are now allowing our teachers who are requesting accommodations. We really think that at this point in time that we are allowing those students who choose to come in the opportunity to do so. And so I just wanted to make that statement on behalf of the board before we move on to the agenda. All righty, so reports and discussions and recommendations. Before we move to a motion for personnel, we have 3 retirements that I'd like to recognize. Ms. Christine Aker, who's an LDTC at both Redwood and Washington School, 35 years she has devoted to education. Marianne Macarino from Washington School. She's in special ed, 28 and a half years she has devoted to educating young people. And Alan Reeder, social studies teacher from Roosevelt, 24 years. We wish you good health and good times. And so we just want to applaud you. And so I am asking for a motion, personnel items 1, retirements and resignations, A and B, appointments, number 2, A through F, leaves of absence, number 3, A and B, and 4, approval of substitutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Good.
Thank you. Any discussion? There being none, Ms. Flowers?
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Rota,
Yes.
Mrs. Merklinger,
Yes.
Mr. Rothstein,
Yes.
President Turnicliffe,
Yes.
President Trigg-Scales.
Yes.
Thank you.
Alrighty, and I'm sorry, I made an error. That number 4, I can't read my own writing, was approval of job description. I thought it said sub. So we know what we were voting on? Okay. I have to print much more clearly for myself. All right, so we are up to B, curriculum and instruction. And we have 4 items there, attachments 3, 4, 5, and 6. Is there a motion to approve?
I guess moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Just one thing briefly, if I
Sure.
may. Just wanted to mention that I took a look at the website for the New Jersey Manufacturing Extension Program, and it's really terrific. I wasn't familiar with the program, and I'm very pleased to see that we're creating opportunities for our students through that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Rothstein. Any other discussion?
I just wanted to make a statement as well to thank the donors, because we do for number 5 have, oh wait, what is it? 6. Yes, 6 donations. Mrs. Mendy, Frances Mendy Scholarship Fund, was actually my music teacher, and I remember her very vividly, and I miss her. I miss her. But thank you. That's all.
Great. Any other discussion? Okay, Ms. Flowers. Was that in curriculum and instruction?
No.
Number 6? Okay, I was a little confused. No, we're in curriculum and instruction, Ms. Huerta. Okay.
Sorry, my apologies.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. All right, so we're ready for a vote. Ms. Flowers.
Okay. Okay, for curriculum and instruction, Mrs. Huerta, excuse me.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Merklinger,
Yes.
Mr. Rothstein,
Yes.
Vice President Turnicliffe,
Yes.
President Trigg-Scales.
Yes.
Thank you.
All righty, and now we're up to finance. And we are looking at in item A, special services 1 through 4.
Ms. Trigg-Scales.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, I apologize. If the board would allow, I would just like to make some remarks on number 4. Special finance, special services. Is that what we're on? Okay. Thank you. So I just wanted to call the public's attention to finance item number 4, which is recommending the approval of the revised extended school year dates. You know, on a previous agenda, we had approved the dates, and obviously we had received a lot of feedback from our parents of our special needs students who were concerned about that that reduction. You know, there are two things that I can say confidently, relatively confidently, is that, you know, it was our understanding that, you know, that we were not violating any laws by doing so. That's, as far as I'm concerned, is as important as the second piece, which is that understanding that while optically we understand that didn't look great, to speak in plain language, of, you know, cutting days of a program for our neediest students in a time when we know they've been struggling, but that isn't necessarily a you know, an acknowledgement that we were not going to remain committed to doing whatever we needed to do, whether it was in that program of 20 days, even now as we instruct them and work with them, and the days successive to that program, once we're back in, God willing, full time, to continue to do what is ever necessary for the remainder of the time that those special needs students are with us to ensure that those gaps were bridged. That being said, recognizing that we were, this was going to represent probably a pitched battle between the school district and our parent community. This was not something that we felt was constructive or positive, or what any of us, either on the community or on the district side, needed at this point in time. And so it was for that reason that we recommended, the administration recommended to the board, the restoration of those 3 days. Thank you, Mr. Scales.
Thank you, Dr. Cascone. All right, so we are looking at special services 1 through 4. Business office items 1 through 10. Is there a motion to accept?
I'll motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Merklinger, Mr. Rothstein. Discussion on these items. Ms. Huerta?
I wasn't sure if I should say it again, but I guess I will. But thank you to our donors. We did receive a couple of donations, and just wanted to highlight one of the donations that was Francis Mendy Scholarship Fund at Washington School. Mrs. Mendy was a music teacher for many years there, and like I said, I remember her vividly, and I miss her. Thank you.
Any other discussion items? I would just like to make reference to number 5, because it looks a little odd that we had donations of $13.20. So I would just like to ask Dr. Cascone if he would like to explain what those are. I can, if.
Yeah, I recall that. Mrs. Flowers, do you want to take the ball on that one? I recall hearing the explanation.
Yes.
But that information has since left my brain.
Okay, I remember, Ms. Flowers.
Yeah.
I think there was a field trip and there was
That's right.
a partial refund, and parents either said to Mr. Hush, it was such a small amount, you don't have to refund it, just take it as a donation, do with it what you like. But I think the checks had already been drawn up, so I think that's why it appears here as it does. I just thought other people might wonder what that was, as I did when I saw it.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so no further discussion on finance. So Ms. Flowers.
Okay, finance, Mrs. Werther?
Yes.
Mrs. Merklinger?
Yes.
Mr. Rothstein?
Yes.
Vice President Turnicliffe?
Yes.
President Trigg-Scales?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're to reports. This is where our HIB report is. And so we need a motion to accept the report as presented by Dr. Cascone. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Tunnicliffe. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Huerta. Any discussion? Ms. Flowers? Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Welter?
Yes.
Mrs. Merklinger?
Yes.
Mr. Rothstein?
Yes.
Vice President Turnicliffe?
Yes.
President Trigg Scales?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we are to petitions and hearings of citizens, and these are for comments not related to the agenda. Well, they can be, but they don't have to be related to the agenda. So Ms. Graf-Tiza, if you would do us the honor, thank you.
Sure, thank you very much, Mr. Scales. Yes, so if anyone has anything to talk about now, to raise your hand button at the bottom of your screen. And for our dial-in attendees, it is *9. And there are no hands raised. Just want to make a final last call, because I do that, and then there's always one person who's like, oh, wait, me. See, there we go.
Okay.
Laura Nosner, if you can follow the prompts on your screen, please.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, we just have your name and address for the record, please.
It's Laura Nessner, 504 Eagle Rock Avenue.
Thank you.
I just wanted to take a minute. I know I sent an email to everybody, but I wanted to take a minute and say thank you so much. The change in my daughter's attitude from just one half day of being in school today was amazing. And I know I told you also that her anxiety has really increased, and we even saw a reduction in that just from one half day that people kept saying was not going to do much for the kids. So I'm sorry. I just want to say thank you so much. That's it.
Yeah. And
thank you.
That is that's all we have for the public comment. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Cascone, would you like to respond to that public comment?
Well, yeah, well, thank you, Ms. Nosner. Appreciate that. And it just feels good to feel good, you know, on some level. You know, I just speaking honestly, like I've almost, you know, I just, you know, kind of sharing just a thought was, you know, I didn't, you know, I wanted to tweet pictures today. But I didn't, because I wasn't sure how it would be received. And I think that's unfortunate, because what I saw today was uplifting to me. And I do think that it can become uplifting for our community, because I think we all need it, not just our kids. I think we all need it more than we know. And so I appreciate you sharing that, Mrs. Nosner, and glad that we were able to provide that for your daughter.
Yes, I just want to say thank you for that email. I think it uplifted several people in this room. So we thank you for sharing. All right, so we are at the report from board members, and as tradition has it, we will start with Ms. Huerta.
Thank you, Mrs. President Terry Trigg Scales. I'm sorry, I'm kind of tired. I do want to wish all of those returning to school, teachers, faculty, staff, students, everybody, custodians, and everybody that has already been in the buildings, just wishing everyone well and sending out positive energy. I try not to mention it too often because it's kind of obvious, but as a person of faith, I I do want everyone just to keep in mind that you are all in my prayers, and I pray just for, you know, patience and grace, you know, for us to give grace as well as receive grace, and just to, as my husband always says, pace yourself, right? Just kind of take your time, take it slow, reactions, just kind of, you know, think about it before you immediately react. And I do want to encourage the public, this is just on a side note, encourage the public to check out the West Orange Public Library. They have many great virtual programming going on that I received an email today as I was doing my board work and kind of going over notes. The West Orange Council of PTAs will also be meeting soon as well. And any local PTA leaders who are interested, the council has a public Facebook page where announcements are made. And yeah, I think I'm just going to end it on a positive note. Thank you for that, Mrs. Nosner. And I guess I don't know, this is kind of corny, but I'll just end it off with a Bruce Lee quote: "Be like water, my friends." And have a good night.
Thank you. See what happens after we stand up? All right, Ms. Merklinger.
Thank you. So, you know, I just want to echo everything Ms. Huerta just said. You know, I want to thank everyone who's been either on site or virtual, just the energy that everyone shares from all of our faculty to our custodians. I want to thank those that were excited to go back to school today for sharing pictures, whether it was on social media, the emails that we got. I'd say today was a particularly tough day at work, and I happened to read an email from a parent, and it literally made me cry. Just the pure excitement and just you could feel the emotion coming through that email and about her daughter being excited to go back to school. So I want to thank that person for sending that email, because it really lifted me up in the middle of the day, and it was really great to hear and see so many positive things. You know, I've said this before, but my husband's a teacher in another district, and he's just amazed by what we've put in place, the steps, the careful and thoughtfulness that we've put into each step of ensuring that the schools are ready to accept students. And so I just want to thank everyone for all their efforts in that, you know, and we continue to move forward as a community and just be respectful of each other. And, you know, part of the Smart Action Alliance is doing those things to help ensure that we continue to move forward and keep the positive numbers low. I want to congratulate Dr. Carrie Orange-Jones. Last year, she was part of an amazing curriculum update on the social studies program. And just the work and care that she put into that presentation just really reflected just what an awesome educator she is. So thank you and congratulations on a well-deserved achievement. Just want to also congratulate Gus Peterson. He completed his Eagle Scout project by restoring and painting the blacktop wall at Hazel. And there are a lot of folks in the community that helped him with that project, but congratulations to Gus. And congrats to Coach Grant on being selected into the New Jersey Scholastic Coaches Association Hall of Fame class of 2020. And Coach Doug Nevins, who was named one of the 2020 United Soccer Coaches High School State Coach of the Year. And our hockey team is off and running. They were 3-0 going into the other night and unfortunately lost, but they have another game coming up. So good luck to our ice hockey team. I think we have basketball and wrestling that are starting up soon as well. And baseball and softball will be starting up. So looking forward to moving kind of in a little bit more normalcy for our students. And with that, I would just say have a great night and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ms. Merklinger. Vice President Tunnicliffe.
Okay, thank you. I also want to congratulate Dr. Carrie Orange-Jones, and I cannot imagine this award going to a better recipient than you. I'm so delighted that our paths crossed many years ago when my boys had the privilege of being educated by you at Kelly Elementary. So we're so proud of you, and and we look forward to seeing the continued work that you'll bring to the district over the next couple years. And I do have a very brief legislative update, if I can just switch my screen. There were 8 bills advanced by the Senate Education Committee on January 14th, and that were sponsored by Senator Teresa Ruiz. Most of them were aimed at increasing diversity and the state's education workforce, preventing teacher shortages, and cultivating inclusive learning environments. And I wanted to highlight just a few of those. Let's see, where was the one I wanted to? One is Bill, S 2833 would establish a teacher apprenticeship program that would offer stipends to provide participants with education and field experience necessary to obtain a New Jersey certificate of eligibility with advanced standing. That is one of them. And then there was another one that was on the school level that's not about equity and diversity, but it's a severe allergy individualized plans. It's Bill S54, and it would require school nurses to develop, an individualized healthcare plan and an individualized emergency healthcare plan for students when requested by the parent or guardian if they have severe allergies. So I know that would dovetail nicely with the policy that we recently adopted last year about allergy plans. So if you're interested in looking that up, it's S54. And I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Rothstein.
Excuse me, thank you very much. So yes, congratulations to Dr. Orange Jones. And for anybody listening, if you have not looked at the West Orange Board of Ed website, she's featured on the website there with a terrific article, definitely worth reading. I encourage you to do that. Dr. Cascone, did I see correctly? You were honored by the West Orange Human Relations Commission?
I was.
Well, congratulations. This was at their annual Martin Luther King celebration?
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I was very honored by the recognition. Thank you for remembering.
I just read the notes. And for everyone who's still hanging out here, clearly you can't get enough of Zoom meetings. So I just wanted to mention again, Wednesday, the elementary curriculum and instruction call at 6:30 p.m. woboe.org/townhall will get you more information, and I'm really looking forward to this. I wanted to speak briefly. I will be brief. My thoughts are a little bit disorganized, so hopefully they'll come out better than they're, fluttering around in my head. It's such a challenge, really, I think, to hear so many different opinions from the community around school opening. And really, this is an issue of safety. And I mostly just want you to know that we take you, I'll speak for myself, and I think I speak for the board as well. I take you at your word. Everybody is so sincere. The emails that we receive, listening to you at these meetings, the occasions when people have spoken to me just in person, we hear so many different opinions, opposing opinions, everyone heartfelt, everyone sincere, and everyone in need of something that will help them move forward in a way where they feel safe for their community, for their children, and for our faculty and staff. And so I think that's sort of where I landed in my thoughts with this, is thinking about people who feel like your concerns are falling on deaf ears, and my concern for you. It is a really challenging and difficult thing to feel unheard. And I want you to know that you are not unheard. There's a difference between being unheard and and things going differently than the way that you would advise or that you feel is the right way. But I'd encourage you that in speaking your voices so sincerely and so eloquently, it's allowed the administration and the board to have very deep and heartfelt conversations that have led to accommodations and led to changes and improvements, honestly. If you're never challenged, it's hard to improve. And so please know that you're heard, that you're making things better, if not convincing things to go exactly the way that you might prefer. And we're grateful to you for that. Also very grateful to our teachers and staff, everybody for turning out and making this as successful an experience as it can possibly be. Finally, one word on, the public health town hall. Thank you to Dr. Cascone and President Trigg Scales for hosting that, and to all of the participants on it. I found it incredibly informative, sometimes challenging to listen to, but the main thing is I'm listening for information. I'm trying to learn as much as I can. And I felt that I learned a lot and it was very helpful. So I appreciate that. Okay, and then one last word, heading into Black History Month. Just trying to expand my knowledge and do a little additional reading, and came across a quote from Barack Obama that I wanted to share because it sort of, I think, framed where my head is going to be at for the next month. President Obama said, "Black History Month shouldn't be treated as though it is somehow separate from our collective American history." And he goes on to say, "It's about the lived, shared experience of all African Americans, high and low, famous and obscure, and how those experiences have shaped and challenged and ultimately strengthened America. It's about taking an unvarnished look at the past so we can create a better future. It's a reminder of where we as a country have been so that we know where we need to go." Just meant a lot to me when I read that and wanted to share it. So thank you all for hearing me out.
Thank you, board members. You all always have the right things to say, and it's much appreciated. And I just want to reiterate that we are listening. As Mr. Rothstein said, we are listening. We get an abundance of emails and communications, and we read each one, and each one affects us. And what we're doing now is not easy. We've talked about being in Dr. Cascone's shoes. Our shoes are a little uncomfortable also. And so we just really want you to know that we take everything that you say seriously and to heart. On a different note, I just wanted to share that the Census Bureau, the New York Regional Office, reached out to us and thanked us as a school district for our participation in helping get everyone counted. And then I just wrote down a couple of things that I wanted to share from the heart. Since last March, we've been on a hyper roller coaster of emotions, really dramatic highs and lows. We all remember the lows of January 6th and the unspeakable events at the Capitol. But then we witnessed a high as the first woman was sworn in as Vice President of the United States, Vice President Kamala Harris. And then a young lady who has tagged herself, hashtag Amanda in Chief, Amanda Gorman, brought us a riveting poem that she wrote and recited, "The Hill We Climb," a poem about national unity. What an inspiration, what hope, what talent in our young people, like in our own young people right here in West Orange. It made me think about how important poetry and oratory are to young people. The state of New Jersey used to test our students on public speaking. They don't do that anymore. And I think that is such a skill that needs to be honed for our young folks. So I'd love to see us expand our opportunities for our students, as well as an emphasis on civics and government and the celebration of the Constitution of the United States. It's getting late. Which is celebrated annually on September 17th. This year, it's going to be on Friday, September 17th. And this day in 1787 is when the delegates to the Constitutional Convention signed the document in Philadelphia. And we should all dedicate some time to becoming much more familiar with the United States Constitution. And so I leave everyone with that thought. And our next board meeting will be held at 7 p.m. on February 3rd. And again, this will be a virtual meeting. And at this point, I'd like to see if there is a motion among us to adjourn. No, everyone wants to stay.
I'll motion.
We're all staying over. Okay. So Ms. Merklinger, was that a yes, a motion?
A second.
A second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, I don't have a gavel. Good night,
Oh, the
everyone.
Thank you. This is just to let everyone know that for those on and off screen, no other business will be conducted. And when the meeting ends, it ends for everybody. Oh gosh. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gruff-Teaser. Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye.
Good night.